and that was many years ago.
Call to order the work session on Monday, March 24th at 5:30 PM. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Jenny.
Mayor Vogel,
Here.
Councilmembers Newbauer,
Here.
Faunus, here, Udvig, here, Robinson.
Here. On to the agenda items. Todd?
Mayor Council, as you know, the police department is in the research and planning phase of implementing a canine program. Staff believes that adding a canine program can enhance law enforcement services to the city of St. Francis, including, in many ways, including drug interdiction efforts on traffic stops, criminal suspect tracking, building searches, search and rescue, enhancing the safety of officers, and community outreach programs such as the Citizens Academy, where we could do demonstrations. The needs for a canine assist over the last several years have ranged from drug detection sniffs on vehicles, tracking suspects that fled from traffic stops, suspects involved in domestic assault situations who fled from residences, and searching and clearing during burglar alarms and open door calls on businesses and homes. Canines have also assisted in searching for missing persons on several occasions and individuals in mental health crisis who have fled to wooded areas and parks. Listed in the report are the agencies that have assisted us over the last couple of years with their canines. And there were also several times where we requested a canine where we couldn't get one because either they weren't available or they were just too far away outside of our area that they wouldn't send their dog. And also listed in the report are some specific examples when canines have been used in St. Francis. The canine officer is just another tool. It helps officers do their job safely and assist in providing the utmost protection and service to the citizens of this community. Adding a canine program to the police department would also help with officer retention. The canine position would allow another advancement opportunity within the department, which is such a vital part of officer retention in today's law enforcement environment. And today we're just looking to engage in some conversation, answer a few questions if we can, and hopefully get some general direction to proceed forward and begin the rest of this process. Included in the packets are tentative timelines for implementation, as well as some cost breakdowns. And you'll see a lot of the initial costs of this program, startup costs, which can often be the most expensive, are covered by various funding sources, including sponsor donations. We've actually had a couple of entities and individuals come forward. They've caught wind of this program and they want to already donate money and see this program exist. One of them actually wants to cover the cost of the dog. And then the other wants to cover the cost of vaccinations and things like that on an annual basis. Some other funding would be the public safety funding that we received late 2023. A small portion of it would come out of our operating budget, and that is more of our annual continuation costs to keep the program going, which would include training, vehicle maintenance, fuel, things like that, that the handler would be driving the vehicle to and from home from the department. And then there's also a $7,500 grant from the American Kennel Club. We've also included some information here about the training company we would like to recommend for both the purchase of the dog as well as the training of the dog and the handler. Mark McDonough is the owner of McDonough Canine. He's a former Coon Rapids police officer for many, many years up until 2015. You can see some of his credentials in there, and from what we found and from the departments and individuals we've spoken to, he is by far the best canine trainer around and has trained the most canines and handlers in this area and really statewide. And just to throw a huge curveball into this, Mr. McDonough did bring up the possibility and some incentives to actually add a second dog to our program. Some of this, the main advantage of adding a second dog would be to obviously not limit it to one handler when that handler is working, 7 days in a 2-week period. So you basically have a dog on 7 days out of 2 weeks. Adding additional handler, putting on opposite rotation of that other handler Now you have a dog on pretty much every day of the week, up to 12 hours a day. So there's some obvious benefits there. Mr. McDonough did, like I said, incentivize this idea, and he is willing to actually cover the cost of that second app to get us going with that. He was just, and Sergeant Larson can probably agree with me. He said he was very impressed, I guess, with the process, how far it's come in such a short amount of time. The work that Sergeant Larson put into it, the information that he's gathered, and just the fact that we've already had some local organizations come forward and want to donate to this program. He was pretty impressed by that, and he wants to, and maybe there's more behind the story, I don't know, but he does want to see us explore the possibility of a second dog. So that's kind of the gist of it. And like I said, there's a timeline if you guys want to go through that. There's some canine, the cost breakdowns, if you want me to explain anything in there. I can try to answer any questions, give you information more if you need some more. Whatever you want to.
Assume we all got questions. I don't know. Want to just start down the road, Kevin? You wanna-
Yeah, thank you very much. I did some diving this afternoon. What I hand out to the rest of the council members is something, just pros and cons to think about. I'm not saying I'm for or against it at this moment, but I just wanted, it was a generality. There was, this pertains to a Metro Transit type application in a bigger city, but again, they were reasonable questions or universal type questions to put out there. My concern, honestly, I did call the League of Minnesota Cities today and asked about litigation concerning bite instances. That popped up here and there as I was doing some homework. And they had no statistics per se, as far as insurance or additional insurance for such a situation. There is no difference in our policy coverage or cost to do that. So that was interesting. She was intrigued the fact that just to look for a statistic of bite instances, if they've had any claims per se. So she said she would get back to me on that. I'm curious if this dog would be a reasonable force, bark and hold type situation or an apprehension situation. They offer two different types of dogs, so to speak.
And the conversation we've had with McDonough, we would try to train that dog or dogs for both.
For both.
For both.
Okay. And then as far as the explosives and or narcotics, would that be a,
The narcotics, yes. The explosives, probably not.
okay. All right, let's see. You mentioned here a total of 15 instances total when you've used neighboring department dogs. Were any of those overlaps where they had more than one dog there from two different agencies? 15 instances in 2 years?
There's been a couple, I think even on our last one, I think Blaine and Isani County had their canines here.
That was for a guy shooting at another person, and then I just requested one 2 weeks ago on Sunday for a male who's barricaded in a residence. And there was no canines available in Anoka County. Every agency in Anoka County did not have a canine available.
Wow.
Luckily, Isani County Deputy Miller came down with his partner and was able to assist us with his dog.
And of the 15 instances, if you can recall, did you have success on those? I noticed, a couple of them that there were some getaways there, but that's gonna happen, but.
Yeah, I think the one that, I guess the first one that comes to my mind, well, obviously the one that Sergeant Larson was just speaking about, the shooting suspect from a different jurisdiction that ended up in ours, he fled from a vehicle. The canine ultimately found him. And then there was the other one that comes to my mind was the missing person. I think it's mentioned in here. Kind of disappeared into the woods with the assistance of our drone and a canine. He was located as well. So there are some success stories there.
All right. And then indulge me, you said the McDonough would offer a second dog
That's what he's saying right now.
and like a two for one?
So, if I may, during our conversation that I had with McDonough, I advised him on some of the sponsorships, the donations that I was receiving. And I advised him on that situation, and he was really impressed. And then the AKC grant that I applied for and was granted at $7,500. The total cost is $18,500 for the dog and the training.
For the first year,
These are
right?
dual purpose dogs, and that's per canine. He said the one sponsor was generous enough through a verbal agreement that he was willing to pay for the one canine. And he's like, well, since you got approved for that grant, you have the 7,500, I'll cover the other 11,000 for the other dog.
Wow,
Yeah.
interesting. And McDonough, again, you've done your homework there. He's not the only game in town, or it's not, town is not the right word, but in a larger radius, is he really highly that accredited where this would be the one-stop shop?
He seems to be, I mean, we've actually spoken to one large agency who actually tried, I don't remember the exact reasons, a different organization to train their dogs, and they went back to McDonough. So
He just signed a two-time, head canine trainer, national champion Brady Harrison from St. Paul PD as one of his trainers. So
Wow,
he's, yes.
all right. Well, I'm really impressed with the beginning of your proposal is how much outpouring from local businesses wanted to help. And that was good, kind of dovetails my question, public perception. That's the commercial public. How about the general public? When did some of your homework and you talked to your Isani cohorts and other departments, what's the general perception when a dog's involved or they know a dog's there? I mean, everybody loves a dog, for crying out loud, and you like you say, it's good PR. It works good for like National Night Out. Again, you always see the sign on some of these dogs, don't pet me. But I mean, you know, they're a working tool for the department, which I can appreciate wholeheartedly. But any general public perception as in one pro or con or?
I haven't
Not
heard
yet,
anything
no.
specific. I think most jurisdictions and cities and counties, when they have a dog show up and they're on the right side of things, they tend to appreciate that tool, especially if they're involved. Obviously, if you're on the wrong end side of things.
Right.
But I think the perception from the public is over positive and supportive of canines. But we haven't really gauged that
Sure.
yet because we don't have one in our community.
I think the biggest kickback we'll get is from the select few that will talk about the cost.
That was my last question. Then the overall, this is 1 year out, a snapshot out of the spring of 26. How about 5 years out as far as budgeting and whatnot? And again, as you and I spoke just before our work session tonight, it's a big commitment. As I was doing some more reading, there's as much pressure on the handler and not so much the dog is kind of goes with the flow. But I mean, it's a commitment. You're adopting a foster person for a foster dog for, I mean, your partner in fighting crime. So.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be in our selection process to make sure that we're using the right handlers that know what kind of commitment they're getting into. As far as the ongoing costs, and by the way, I do think we have a couple of officers in our department that have voiced interest, and if any one of them were involved in this program, I would be, I think they would be the ones we would want there. So I don't have a lot of concerns there. And as far as the ongoing costs and things like that, the main thing, like I've noted in here, is just gonna be the maintenance of the squad that they drive or he or she drives. There's some additional maintenance costs there that we estimated, additional tires per year, additional fuel, oil changes, things like that. Training costs, annual training costs, which we estimated on the high end. The initial training cost is gonna be the biggest expenditure for training. And there's some ongoing training throughout the year that they'll have to complete. And then obviously the shift differential that we're proposing, that would have to be agreed upon by the union and things like that. But all that added up, right now we're estimating, like I said, on the high end, about $11,000 per year from an operating budget standpoint to cover that. That's after the initial startup costs, and that's after the squad conversion and everything else to a canine vehicle. And all that stuff will be covered by one of the four, besides the operating budget, one of the funding sources that are noted in there.
Okay. I remember us talking about the drone, I think a year and a half ago, and you had the cost laid down. I kind of gave you a wink and a nod of when are you gonna ask for a dog? And now here we are. So, but I in the back of my mind, I think a town of 85 to 8,700 people, and we have an awesome force, and we have all the shifts are filled. We have a drone. Do we need a dog? That's my general question to me. Is now the right time? There's a year out to take care of business here, to get it done and to get indoctrinated and separate. So I guess the bottom line is I wouldn't be opposed to it. You guys are more than taking care of your own business and then as far as being prudent in what you spend and what you do and how you do it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
I guess we never know how long a dog's gonna last if they get shot or injured. So what is the process if our dog gets injured and is no longer, what is the process for replacing them? How does that work?
Yeah, so we would, and we talked about that. We actually talked about and talked to other agencies to see if there's such thing as placing insurance on the dog or something like that. So that is one of the things we're looking into. Not real common from what we found, but it's one of the things we're looking to. Other than that, it's probably something we're gonna have to try to tie into our capital budget a few years out and just be prepared for that unknown. And, you know, and again, I'm not overly concerned with that. You know, if we don't have insurance or we didn't have the exact funding at the time to replace that dog. Not that I'm relying on the public for that, but I have no doubt that people would come forward and help the city out. I've seen it done in other cities. Don't want that day to ever come, but I think the best thing to do would to prepare for that, whether it's through a capital budget or something like that.
And that would be the same with like the emergency, because obviously if they have to go to the vet, I mean,
Right.
they're covering the general maintenance, but if there was an incident where the dog was injured and we had to take it to the vet, then
That
you
would
would
be-
also add that
yep.
into the cap. That was my main question. Kevin, Kevin took the rest of mine, so let Kevin go first and take all the good questions.
I'm sorry.
Make him go out.
Trying to do my homework.
I'm kidding, Kevin.
No, that's cool.
Good job, Kevin.
No.
I'm good. First or last, I'm still gonna ask.
Got anything else?
No, that was my main question.
Kind of to piggyback on what Sarah said, like, what is the work lifespan of a canine? Like, I mean, maybe, I don't, and not their life, like, what is their,
Expected useful life of the
Yes.
equipment.
Yeah, did you get that information from McDonough?
It varies on the dog and the handler also, how much they work and, but it's around 6 to 8 years.
okay. And then if something was to happen to the handler, and they weren't available, would the dog respond to other officers? And will the other officers have some limited training with the dog? I'm not familiar with how that works.
Probably not. You know, even to train, because when these officers go through the training, they train with the dogs, so they're almost getting trained at the same time.
Okay,
They're like
And
one unit, right?
yeah, and typically the dogs would not respond to anybody else. So, in that type of situation, we would have to evaluate it, see what, you know, why is this officer out, what's going on? You know, obviously if that officer leaves to go to another agency, that dog stays with the city. We would have to make a decision at that point to see what we want to do. Do we want to try to train somebody else? You know, sure, McDonough could give us some good advice on that. I'm sure he's seen all of that before, so I think we would lean on him if something like that arose, so. But it's hard to say without knowing the exact situation.
sure. Well, that was my next question. What if the officer leaves to go to another agency? So, and then I'm just curious, what other cities around us have canine units and which ones don't? You probably don't know it, but it's okay.
So obviously all the counties surrounding us do, all the sheriff's office is do, Sherburne, Isani, Anoka, Hennepin, Ramsey, all of them. Blaine PD, I'll just list them in Anoka County if I can. Maybe, well, even Princeton, I know Princeton PD does, up Mille Lacs County, I think. Blaine PD has one, Fridley. Actually, these agencies have a couple because they're pretty large. Coon Rapids, Ramsey does not, I don't believe. Lionel Lakes does. Maybe. Seems like the east side's struggling over there a little bit.
Honestly,
with
they do,
getting
because I think
dogs,
I've
but-
seen a vehicle that
thought
had
they
canine
do.
on it when I was working over
Um,
there, but I'm not 100% on that.
Columbia Heights does. So some of the larger, more urban agencies south of us obviously do. Elk River does. Forest Lake does. So like even a lot of the medium size city departments have them, but obviously the counties do.
Okay, and then just two more things, the I have kids at the high school and they do locker checks sometimes. Would the canine be able to help the schools in that too, or?
Probably gotta have a resource officer for that.
I don't get me started.
So that is something that changed a few years ago, even when we had a resource officer. The random checks used to be allowed. It's really not anymore. That would really have to be initiated by the schools, to do that. And if, it's basically assisting the schools with that. And I'm not saying it would happen weekly or monthly. But if they had a situation, and they wanted a dog to walk through the school and hit on certain areas, we would definitely run it through our city attorney at that point. It used to be a lot different where, we used to request a dog and the dog used to walk by and sniff lockers and,
Mhm, mhm.
it's just not that way anymore,
Okay.
for Fourth Amendment reasons. So, that has changed a little bit, but yes, there are places that still do that and that still serves a purpose in the schools, but, there's gotta be I would say a policy and a process behind that and not just random.
Okay. And then I'm sure this is way down the road, but we've had a lot of fun with, when we get a new snowplow, the community's gotten to help name the snowplow. Would we be able to help name the dog?
Possibly, it kind of depends on the funding sources again, so I think anybody, like especially if somebody wants to cover the cost of a dog, we're certainly gonna trying to give them some recognition and maybe even see if they want to name the dog or something like that, but who knows? Yeah, anything's possible. But I think if we get donors and sponsors, we're gonna give them that kind of stuff.
I just thought that would be fun.
Yeah.
That was my only question. Thanks.
All right, some of this is already answered. You mentioned close to 11,000 for annual costs, and do we have any annual sponsorships like continuing other than like I seen the dog food was in there as a possibility, not
Yeah.
necessarily a guarantee, but.
And the one that so far, that has voiced any type of sponsorship or an annual type cost would be the St. Francis Vet Clinic
vet,
has
yeah.
offered to pay for the annual vaccinations.
Which definitely helps. So it'd be roughly 11 grand out of the budget.
Yeah, and again, that's estimating on the high
Right.
end, even on the high end of training, but.
Appreciate McDonough for offering the second dog. I don't want to insinuate any non-propriety, but he's helping himself too if we use him for training, but.
Oh, yeah.
Is there guarantees on dogs? Like,
So,
go ahead.
so the Goddess canines, they get shipped from overseas, Czech
Okay.
Republic, Europe area, Germany,
Interesting.
and they have a 1-year working guarantee.
Like can know if the dog's gonna work
Shots,
out type of thing.
everything.
That's awesome. Okay. Let's see here. That was answered. So these are, like you say, they're tied to the handler. So this handler can't have a family, so to speak, or they're good with families or better, because like I said, the no pet me signs and whatnot. How does that
and
work?
Some dogs so we're either looking at a German Shepherd or Belgian Malinois. I believe the German Shepherds are just a little mellower. And again, it's gonna depend on, I guess, long story short, yes, they can have families, dogs. Many of our canine handlers in Anoka County we have families, kids and things like that. So I think it's really how they're trained going through McDonough Canine, and they'll go through all that. And especially touch on their home life, and do's and don'ts around kids and things like that, and kenneling and all that kind of stuff. So that will be covered in training, but yes, they certainly can have families and kids and everything else. So.
Okay. And then, Amy asked this and I was typing and I wasn't paying enough attention, but the handler or if the handler has to quit or whatever, that dog, what happens with that dog then?
It stays with the city.
It does. How does that work then if it's like kind of trained to one person? They just gotta get retrained type of thing?
We would, that's something we would need to definitely go through McDonough for. and talk
Okay.
to them about. But I know, depends on the agency, depends on policies, but a lot of canines do stay with the city. Or you put a length of time, maybe close to that useful life of the dog, that the officer has to stay in that position. But again, you really can't make them sign a contract and make them
Right.
stay. So
On the union involved and everything else too.
we certainly
so.
don't want to train a dog and a handler and have them leave in a year. We want to try to reuse that dog some way, somehow.
Okay, I think it's interesting. I guess the only last question I have is what's next? Because I know based on what I read, you're kind of looking to just kind of further the research, so to speak. Or what are you really looking for from us tonight, I guess?
Just some general direction, I guess, general support. If I came in here and everybody's slamming their fists and saying absolutely not, I probably know it's probably not a good program, not a good time to move forward with this, but if I know I have general support, then I'm not gonna be too shy about going through the rest of the process, which is
Spending the time on it.
in the timeline. It's, basically accepting the donations we got. Beginning with talks with the union, April and May, both maybe coming up with an MOU, May, June for your approval. And again, I don't want to bring an MOU before council for a program that you don't support. So June, some policy development, and we would start the handler selection after that. Probably have that done by fall, have a pretty good idea, have this program in place, and then they would, handlers would train in the spring of 20.
Yeah, I mean, I support the idea of at least one. I don't think the cost is too outrageous. Annually, are you gonna seek more donations as well, like for sponsorships for the annual cost of it?
For this, unfortunately, we can't solicit donations.
Oh, really?
What? The word's starting to get out a little bit. Michelle Anderson from Remax.
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce too.
Yeah, she's huge with the
She
community.
sent me an email wanting to help sponsor too.
Okay.
So, I mean, the word's just starting in the city and.
Right.
It doesn't take long in a smaller community to, when the police department has a plan, gets out pretty quick.
What's the reason you can't solicit it? Just curious. Is it, obviously it's legal, I'm assuming.
And I actually brought the information with me. It's,
Not a big deal. I was just curious.
yeah, there's certain, for a government entity like law enforcement, we can solicit pretty much just for events that bring a public benefit, like community outreach things like that. We can solicit funds from businesses and things like that for that. But I mean, I think it would be a stretch. I think there is a public benefit for this canine program, but I think it's a little bit of a stretch. So I don't know that it'd be comfortable going out. I mean, most agencies and counties that do solicit funds, they do it as a nonprofit. They create a
Right.
501c3 organization to do it. They're not doing it as a government entity.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I've heard all about those recently with Doge.
Yeah.
So. And that's all I have. Thank you.
A recent LMC training confirmed what you just said about the donations. So, overall, I think it's worth pursuing. Most of my questions were answered. I just made certain assumptions, like every 5 years you'd have to do a new dog. When I was just doing some rough math, and it looks like the upfront, everything, I went higher than even your higher estimates, but upfront, everything's like $47,000 all in is what I saw. Or whatever, and then per year, if we start building in a CIP to replace a dog, I was just putting 5 years, that'd be about another $3,700 a year you'd have to put into your CIP. Get back to your 18,500 for a dog, so per year, I was at roughly 17,000 per year, but that includes setting money aside for another dog.
Sure.
So, only other questions I had, actually, the insurance one that you brought up earlier a little bit. So I'd like to see that clarified a little bit, both on the bite side and to Sarah's point, the dog being injured, insurance, what that looks like.
yeah, and actually, I think Jenny even helped us. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think we had Jenny, I believe we had Jenny contact the league on that, and they did say that there was no increase in insurance premiums for adding a canine.
Good.
So as far as the bite, that's litigation. I forecast that,
But just if the dog got hurt like this.
oh, yeah, I mean, again, yeah, we are kind of looking into an insurance thing on that, but
Other questions I had all around just in general, how this works. And I know I've had talks with Dave about this a little bit too, when we're doing mutual aid situations and our dog gets hurt going to somebody else's call, or I'm just more curious about how that works. I mean, you got a neighboring city we're going over there with our dog a lot. I say that, when are you gonna share in the cost of something like that? So I don't know.
yeah, and I think that's always kind of a, something to think about with mutual aid. The insurance and all that kind of stuff would fall on us. It's under mutual aid. If as long as it falls under our policies and guidelines to go assist that. we're gonna go. But I think, that's something that we just need to monitor, and if we're constantly going somewhere, we've changed policies internally where we found ourselves assisting extensively in certain areas at certain locations, not within our city, but close to our borders, because we're so very close to some of these places. We've changed our procedure and policies on some of that, just because we are increasing the risk for our officers constantly going to these places, and it's kind of being expected. So we have dialed that back in other areas, and I think the same could be done for something like this. If we're constantly going to the same location over and over with a dog, a drone, or whatever the case may be, and it's increasing hazards or liability for our officers, we're gonna look at policies and dial that. So I think it's pretty similar to any other tool and other mutual aid we provide.
How many dogs, do you know off the top of your head, how many dogs does Anoka County have?
We have 2,
Sheriff's office.
Yep, sorry.
3.
3, they're in the process, yeah.
I think that's really all I've got.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure, certainly, go ahead, Bill.
You know how our citizens love a surprise. How would you roll out, or PR wise, roll this carpet out slowly? So people are going, oh, Gestapo, we got dogs, we got police, we got, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Things get blown out. How would you?
It would be toward the end before I want to make sure that everything else is covered. At the same time, I would recognize sponsors and all that kind of stuff, but I would roll it out toward the end as we get close to actually put these dogs on the street. And then we would, whether it's a social media thing or whatever, we want to make the community know what we're doing.
Just make it a huge positive rather than
Make it a huge
any negative
positive.
garbage.
Yeah, and I can't, we're not gonna have petting stations and things like that, national night out. But they will be there, they will be visible. We'll just have to put restrictions on what they're doing, but, yeah, we'll definitely roll it out. We'll make it known. Make it a positive for the community and hopefully a deterrent for the other half and, keep them out of here. So that's kind of the goal of it.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions?
Which one do you think is gonna be the dunk tank this year?
We'll get somebody in there. Not me.
Stay on topic.
Not me.
Sorry.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. On to fire inspector pending resignation operations.
Mayor Council, the fire department is seeking some direction on 2 different topics related to the same subject. We've been notified that Captain Evan Sturgill and his family will be relocating to the Brainerd Lakes area this summer. I just found out last week that they had an offer accepted on a house up there, so that process is moving along. They're waiting for their daughter to graduate high school, which happens this year, and then their house will be placed on the market. So obviously this creates a challenge for us. Captain Sturgill has been instrumental in our public education fire inspection program. He's been served in that role since 2018 and really has, helped us resurrect that role significantly. He also works 16 hours a week, typically scheduled. So he comes in Tuesdays and Wednesdays, works on inspections, re-inspections, and planning and coordinating all of our public education events. Over the last 2 years, I have on the second page, you can see he's worked 886 hours in 2023 and 966 hours in 2024. So we're essentially at a half-time position with his current workload. So what we're really looking for today is he has offered to stay on the department till October, which will get us through kind of our heavy public education pieces with the bike rodeo, Night to Unite, our French Toast Breakfast, and our summer events. And he'll continue to work those inspection days. So he'll come down, he'll work Tuesday, stay overnight at the fire station, work Wednesday, and then head back up to Brainerd. The challenge that we have is that's in conflict with our current policies, that all firefighters have to reside within 10 minutes of the fire station, or all part-time firefighters have to reside within 10 minutes of the fire station. So one, we're looking for direction on whether council is generally agreeable to allow Captain Sturgill to continue to work to get us through kind of the heavy summer months of our workload. The second piece to that is looking into the future. We don't have a whole lot of staff that have the same type of availability that Captain Sturgill has. Captain Sturgill is self-employed, so he can pick jobs as he chooses and works around his fire department schedule to fill in the blanks. Generally speaking, all of our other fire department staff have 40-hour-a-week jobs, typically during daytime hours. So that certainly creates a challenge for us to backfill that position internally. We do have a couple candidates that have more flexibility during the week, just not quite to the same extent as Captain Sturgill. Don't know if they're interested, and both of them would require some additional training to be able to fulfill that role as a fire inspector as well. So that creates a challenge for us moving forward. The second piece is, as part of our consultant study with Bethel, one of the recommendations that they are providing is that that fire inspector position moves towards a full-time position. So with this opportunity of Evan leaving, we're kind of in transition, getting some recommendations from our consultant that that's the direction that the department should go. I'm really looking for direction and what the council's feeling is on how we fulfill this position moving forward. We could also look at a part-time contracted position. Right now in the League of Minnesota Cities, there's 6 full-time fire inspector positions open across the state. So there's a lot of opportunities out there right now as well, which doesn't make our job easier in trying to fill this position. But I really laid out 3 options for you guys to discuss and provide direction back towards the fire department on how you want us to move forward. Keep the position as it currently is and try and find the best suited internal candidate if there's somebody interested to fill that position. Look at potentially getting a contracted position, part-time basis, or look at transitioning this position to full-time in 2026. We've identified the public safety funds as having some ability there to cover the cost for probably close to 2 years with this position. And in our financial plan, we do have this position budgeted in 2028 to go full-time. So that would buy us the 2 years before we would see any additional impact on the tax or to go that direction. So again, just looking to see where the council is sitting on allowing Captain Sturgill to continue until October in more of a non-traditional role with the fire department, and then your desire on how we fill this position moving forward.
So how many inspections like per, I don't even want to say per week, like per month does he typically do?
On average per month, now it waxes and wanes a little bit because some businesses require an annual inspection, some are 2-year cycles, some are 3-year cycle.
Okay.
On average, it's 10 to 12 inspections per month based on his availability now.
Okay.
Yep.
And then it seems like from our reports that there's also pretty consistently a reinspection with a couple, and not just one, any certain businesses at a time, but
Yep.
it just seems like anytime in our report that there's an inspection, there's also a couple re-inspections.
I would say generally we have about a 50% reinspection rate, and those could be something as simple as a fire extinguisher wasn't appropriately tagged as being serviced, right? He can't complete the inspection because there's a component missing. Sometimes there are larger issues that require multiple re-inspections because it may be more of a costly correction for the business owner to fix. So again, we try to educate over enforcement. And if we find a violation that's going to cost a couple $1,000s for the business owner to become in compliance, we don't want that done and have it be a punishment that they're completing it in 30 days. So we tend to do a structured follow-up over a period of time so they can complete it at a reasonable pace.
Okay. And then, so our overall plan is to actually transition to a full-time.
That was discussed as part of our financial plan when we went through all of the staffing, and again, confirmed through, our consulting process.
Okay. And, so is, by Evan staying on he would just be staying on as the fire inspector and as.
He would still
the
cover
training.
calls while he was
He
here.
would still, okay,
Yep.
so he would still continue to do all the training that he would need to do. He's
Yep.
not gonna,
He
okay.
would still continue to be a responder, and that's why it works out well for him if he were to do it Tuesday into Wednesday, because Wednesdays are drill day.
okay,
So he'd be here every morning on Wednesdays to make sure that he's still accounting for his training hours, required training hours. If he's here for that period of time, I would suspect that he's probably also going to be making his percentages as well.
okay,
So, but again, it's outside of our current policy. He's willing to do this to help us kind of buy us some time to figure out what this looks like and to ensure that our public events for this upcoming year are done with a level of fidelity that the community has expected.
and he could also, I would hope that in that time, if we can find somebody, he could also kind of help train that.
That would be the
person
hope.
Into that.
That would be the whole.
That, I guess I don't necessarily see it being a problem as long as he can, I mean, we want to make sure he's keeping his training and his percentages
Yep.
up. But I guess if we don't have anybody who's willing to step into that position currently, and I would assume that anybody who could, it's still gonna take them a little while to adjust their normal work, their regular work schedule to be able to accommodate this. So I'd be willing to look at it in, just for that interim, so that we can get through this. He has all that experience already and knows who to contact about the bike rodeos and the national night out and all that stuff. So I think as a transition, that it's something that we do need to look at.
Thank you.
I'm jumping just because I got more
Yeah.
questions and I apologize because due to computer issues, I really get a good look at this till earlier today. So
Yeah.
otherwise, some of these I would have thrown at you. I'm just curious, how many people are qualified to do inspections right now in the fire department?
So we have 7 people that have their fire inspector 1 certification through the state. We have 1 additional that has their fire inspector 2 through the state, all of which work a normal daytime, Monday through Friday work schedule. Primarily, all of our business inspections are done during the business day. So that creates a bit of a challenge. I think we may have another one that would be potentially interested in taking on the role, but would need to go to some additional training before they could become qualified, if you will, for the. That's really our challenge is it's not whether or not we have people that would be necessarily interested. The nature and the scope of this job in particular really does require that daytime availability during the business week to be able to interface with those inspections, to interface with our third-party vendors. So that's really where it comes into play. Most of our planning meetings for our pub ed events are during the day as well. So just having that continuity of business as it occurs today is really our big challenge with this role in particular.
And we have, again.
No, it's okay.
Right, currently, right now, we have 2 full-time with this, or what?
No, we have 2 full-time right now.
We have
but
2
he's-
full-time employees within the fire department and Evan is a part-time employee. He just has scheduled hours that other firefighters don't have.
And Tim's like a hybrid position. I don't know
Correct.
how much he does administratively now since the move, but.
Expand.
So he helps with administrative stuff as well, or he kind of was in the beginning. I don't know where we're at with that, but Kate would have to tell us, I guess, what he does there.
Well, I'd like to know the answer. I do.
It was like a hybrid position where he was gonna help out with calls while he was here, but he's also gonna help the administration, which is how we justified the full-time when we approved it.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we really haven't utilized him since the elections. He helped us get through the elections, but is filling full-time fire since the.
But if they need him, they could probably pull him as long as he wasn't on a call, obviously, too.
So
And it's, that role is still identified as dual purpose, or it has not been re-identified yet as?
Mayor and Council, we haven't brought that back to council to update the job description, so that's kind of a housekeeping piece. If we were to get him transitioned to full-time fire, we would need to update his job description and take the administrative duties off of it.
I think it'd be nice to clean that up. I don't know. I mean, if that's how it's being utilized, I don't know if you see the necessity to pull them back into the administrative side at some point, but.
Mayor,
Yeah, I get it.
depends on the day.
Right.
Mayor and Council, I think
Let me ask you this, is there a conflict, I guess, then if. Cause his job description right now is both, which he obviously does more fire right now. But if you needed him for something, there's not any kind of thing that says he can't do what you're asking him to do necessarily because it's filled. But if you got the administration off of it, which that creates other issues, I guess, too, cause. How we created the position to begin with, which is confusing, so.
Mayor and Council, correct, so right, like any staff, I think if we needed the help to pull them for something, we would. And I don't see anybody on our team saying no. I mean, if we had
Right.
something that really came up. But we haven't used him in admin since the election, so if to housekeeping on that job description is needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too, because I mean, in order to get a true picture on what our fire department's costing, if we're splitting the cost, it doesn't. unless his entire salary, so to speak, is being covered by fire right now, I don't think we get a good enough read on what fire is that if it's being shared with administrative and fire, so I would. Sure.
Well, Mayor, Council, I don't want to speak necessarily for Darcy, but at the same time, it's all coming out of the same
Right.
funds. So, but individual department budgets, it would be reflective on what that department itself.
You know, your discussion, I don't know if this really took this per se, but I mean, it kind of is a part of this, I think. So,
We can clean that up.
and then, my thought right now on the proposal, I just think there's a lot of gray right now, especially with the Bethel thing.
There is.
So I'd be inclined to just staying internal and trying to, that's just my thoughts right now. I mean, I still have, I think, more questions as I chew on this some more, but, and I'm cleaning that position up. I don't know if that changes things at all.
Well, putting him in the
To-
training position
Right.
or the inspection as well, if he's. It's gonna sound terrible, and I don't mean to sound this way because I know everybody here works hard, so I apologize if this comes off as. Sounding bad, not my intention, but. You had somebody that was doing two jobs at once or a hybrid position, half that job is freed up now, so to speak. Is he able to fill that position then is the question. I have other questions too, but that's kind of where I think you were going with.
Yeah,
it.
it is. I mean, it's part of it kind of has to be. part of
Not
this
not that he's got all this
discussion.
free time, because I know you guys are busy and do
Correct.
stuff, so like I said, I didn't mean to sound
Right.
bad, but.
No, I think everybody's tracking with the thought process. I can assure you, he's not waiting for admin to call him down and not doing anything in the
Right.
meantime. He really has taken over all of our technology initiatives this year, which he's done a tremendous job with and which has been much needed. On top of, we're still operating without the assistant chief position, so a lot of those responsibilities have kind of folded organically into both of our roles a little bit. So I had to take on a little bit more of that. And he took the pieces that were appropriate for the level that he's at. So, but again, to the administrator's point, nobody here is off limits. If somebody needs help, we
Right.
jump in and help. So
What's the, sorry,
No, I think you should just continue on with your questions
Okay.
at this point, so.
sorry.
Go
So,
ahead.
so what's the probability of him being available to do the inspections?
well, I think in the meantime, regardless, there's going to be some time where we're gonna have to carve out
It's gonna
of our
happen.
schedule. We're certainly not gonna be able to keep up at the pace that Captain Sturzel has been performing at, which is a bit of my concern. We have a very good record of having significantly less dollar loss in our community compared to other communities, especially around us. Which again is testimony to the work that we've all done, but in particular Captain Sturzel. So we won't be able to replicate the repetition that we're operating at now. And it's even likely more so over on the public education events, which require a tremendous amount of planning. So we're obviously all going to dig in and fill in the gaps where we can. I just don't have anybody that has the bandwidth right now
Right.
that has been doing it at the pace that Captain Sturzel has been.
What about outsourcing to Metro West to fill those positions? What's the cost of that, or do we have an idea?
I don't know what they would cost. I know on the permit side, when they're doing a permit related inspection, they get paid through the permit fees, if I'm correct.
Okay, so I know they do our commercial still, or a lot of our,
Not on the fire inspection side. They do it on the plan review side.
okay.
We're still doing the public and commercial fire inspections.
No, that's a good question. I am curious what that would.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I guess as a exploratory thing, I would look into that. What else did I have? As far as questions, that's all that I had. The only thing I would say is, I mean, I appreciate you bringing it to us, especially given it's not in our policy. Would he be able to keep up his percentages to the level of every other expected firefighter with those couple days that he's doing though?
We did some modeling and it appears that he'll be just fine on his percentages. He was coming out at about 24%, just taking those 2 days into account. But obviously during those 2 days, he's
What
only
comes in,
doing
right?
fire department stuff, right? So, most of our models showed him well above the 20% threshold.
I just have a hard time going away from policy because we have a policy for a reason and unfortunately I had to let somebody go recently
And
for,
that's why I'm bringing it to the council for guidance.
so I kind of have a hard time with that, given it's a policy, but, I personally would just like to see what Metro West would cost if that's an option. I don't know if that's an option. And what's Tim's viability, I guess? I don't know. I'd like to learn more about it personally, but I don't know, how soon do you need to, I mean, when is it again? When's he?
Ideally, I'd like to have an answer for Evan by June 1st. So he knows kind of what the expectation is once they formally move. Again, it's all subject to when his house gets listed, when it gets sold. We just wanted to be forthright about where we're at.
Okay.
And if there was any latitude where we could make this work. If it was the middle of winter and things were kind of settling down for the season, I think we'd probably have a very different discussion. But we really are in and continuing into our busy season. So this again just buys us time.
Right. Well, I appreciate that he understands what's going on and he's like ready to go to help us. So I appreciate him willing to do that, especially you said Brainerd Lakes.
Yeah, they just
Like
had an
12 hours
offer
away.
accepted in Baxter, so,
That's a long drive, so
right.
that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Amy?
Well, I just had a few questions. You said he does 10 to 12 inspections per month.
Correct.
So how many businesses do we have in St. Francis that need to be inspected?
I believe if you count daycares, I think the occupancy count is at 86, 87. And some of those are an annual, all of the gas stations have to be inspected every year, right? So those would be an annual. So those multiply on the off years. So if he's doing gas stations every year, but now McDonald's is due, right? So it really does vary month to month and year to year based on where they're at as far as their prescribed fire inspections.
And so that is, I don't want to say real businesses, but that's like businesses that people can walk into. That doesn't.
For the most part.
Does that count home businesses at all?
It does. So the county does require licensed daycares to have inspections.
So those, and then are there some categories of businesses that get inspected by the state fire marshal instead of us?
Yes, so
And
that
what
would
are
be your
those?
schools and healthcare facilities.
Okay. And then, okay. And why are those done by the state instead of us?
That's called out by state statute.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then,
Legislature's brilliant.
so you mentioned the, Bethel,
Yep, the study.
the study.
Yes.
Thank you. Have you looked at, I'm sure you probably have, the East Bethel study that was done
I have,
last October? It was published last October,
I have.
but it had been going on for months before that.
Yep.
Have we looked at that as far as, that study said that fire departments of East Bethel's size should consider going back to fewer medical calls, back to just major medicals. And I'm not sure if you have considered that, but much of what I hear you say is that we don't have enough people to do all the work. Like, we need another full-time person to do fire inspections now. So have we really looked at making sure that maybe there's a way that we could limit the amount of work that we do by going back to just major medicals instead of
Sure.
all medicals?
I guess two things. One, I'm not up here advocating for another full-time position. I'm simply providing that as an option for the situation that we're in. I think the other germane piece to this is this discussion is not part and parcel related to our run volume. We're talking about this position because of the technical aspect to it, which is very different than having a firefighter EMT run out to any type of call. In my experience, and the mayor and I have had several conversations about this in the past, we have a lot of challenges that we're dealing with, most of which are outside of our control. The extended response times from our transporting agencies, the lack of consistency in the information that's not only being received by the dispatcher, but also what is getting dispatched out to our responders. I would certainly hate for us that has the capacity and the capability and the bandwidth on a response side to treat every call as if it's that person's worst day and provide the highest level of not only medically trained, but compassionate care that we can offer this community. Because I think that really is the expectation that everybody has. In relationship to this position, this is a technical position that's not in everybody's wheelhouse, and quite frankly, less and less in people's wheelhouse. With Captain Sturzel leaving, we really want to just figure out how we make the best out of this opportunity with council's direction. So I'm not advocating for a full-time position, nor am I advocating for a part-time position. I just want to be able to make the best decision that we can based on the input that you guys are giving us. It's that simple, so.
Well, I think, I mean, it's nice that Captain Sturcell is willing to stay on for a few months, but it's probably no secret that I feel that if you're gonna make an exception for one person, not following policy by living in the city, that you'd have to make similar exceptions for other people. And I just think that would be wrong, to make an exception here. And, you know, you said that Captain Sturcell is gonna leave soon. I personally knew about 6 months ago that his wife had accepted another job. And so maybe some of the training could have been taking place earlier. That would be my thought. I probably would be against him staying on in that capacity past then. I mean, it's March. There's time between now and then to train
There
someone
is.
else, or you could fill in for
There
those
is.
roles, or Tim could as well. And we talked about how if Tim is doing administrative things, you weren't here, but I watched or I was either at the meetings or I watched them. And correct me if I'm wrong, when Assistant Chief Lawrence left, it was brought to the council to make a full-time assistant chief position, because Joe Lawrence was not. And I believe it was not voted for at that time. And then about 2 months later, it came to the council for a hybrid position, and it was voted for at that time. And so that's what I remember about it. And so I was, as a private citizen, I was thinking he would still be doing some administrative work to fill that role. But my other question is, Captain Sturcell's been working 16 hours a week at the station a couple of times. I drive by a lot and I see his truck there a lot. How does the officer stipends work in there? Because the officers receive a stipend
Correct.
of X amount of dollars. And so when they get their paycheck, it's probably monthly, they get a portion of their stipend, or quarterly or whatever. But their hours that are put on there, they're paid for training,
Correct.
calls they have gone to,
Correct.
and additional hours as needed? Or is the stipend supposed to cover those additional items that their assigned task?
Their
like-
stipend generally covers their duty officer rotation requirements. So, and not that we're restricting their movement while they're duty officer, but the expectation is that they remain with a higher level of availability because they are the primary person after hours to cover those emergency events. So the stipend is designed to cover those types of activities. Most everything else, much like Captain Sturcell, they get their hourly rate for. But because they're doing above and beyond with their duty officer rotation, that's where the stipend has traditionally covered expense.
Okay. I guess I don't know sorry to jump, Metro West. Can you explain what Metro West is that Joe asked
So-
about?
Kate would have a
Mayor
better
Council, I
explanation.
can tackle that one. So Metro West is our building inspector. So they would not do fire inspections. They are building permits, and our state designated building inspector, septic.
They're
So
not
they,
qualified necessarily to do the fire inspection.
that's
I just
different
forgot.
type of inspections.
Inspection, I think inspection, so.
Yeah, no, so they would look at the plans for a building. They are not going to walk through a building
That's what you meant. but-
and look for unsafe hazards.
So to that point then, I have no idea, is there a company that does do fire inspections?
Not that I'm aware of. Now, certainly I haven't spent a whole lot of time and energy researching if there's a third-party fire inspection company. I know there's other cities that have contracted another city's fire inspector to fill that role. So when I was with Brooklyn Park, our fire inspector was contracted by the city of Osseo to go do fire inspections in Osseo for 2.
Well, just, I mean, that brought up a point. I mean, other cities of our size are nearby. They probably have the same issue, so. One idea is to explore contracting with a nearby city for that, just for those, just for fire inspections. Yeah.
Kevin?
Public education and fire inspection, could that position be split in two for two different individuals?
We could, there would be a budget implication for obviously one way or the other, there's gonna be a budget implication, right? We certainly could look at exploring separating those two out, sure.
You look at the captain's past the deal, that 886 hours came to $15.17 an hour. And the 966 hours came to $15.97.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was the normal fireman rate that we're
Correct.
paying, so that's interesting in itself. You and I spoke earlier, a week or two back. The captain who's leaving, he might go into business for himself in another capacity or fire capacity in his new location, which is awesome. What if he was to form an LLC or something and actually be a subcontractor and still work for the city of St. Francis and forget about the policy problem? He could come in as a subcontractor and take care of our business that way.
And I can't speak for him. I think
Understood.
if that were the case, I think part of what it makes it palatable and I'll speak for Captain Sturzel the best that I can, is if they're still able to respond to calls, it makes a difference if you're coming down to sleep in the fire station for a night, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're providing those additional duties as
Right.
needed. Where if he was simply coming down as a contract fire inspector, I don't know if that 2-hour drive one way begins to make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, but for the
If that makes
frequency of
sense.
his visit, maybe over the duration of a month, how many times would he have to come down? Can you accomplish X amount of stuff in, say, even an overnight trip? If he's an independent business person, has that prerogative, we have, has that prerogative.
Yep.
I mean, if he was going to go into business, and then again, this is all hypothetical, of
Sure,
course.
absolutely.
Might run into a situation too where it's something you gotta put out for bid or something too. I don't know how they determine what needs to go out for bid or not.
That's a possibility, but I'm just floating it out there.
Just throwing it out there too. I don't know.
And then you kind of answered my question, is the assistant chief currently stacked with the business? Well, I guess that's to be determined, where the workload's gone down a little bit, so maybe there's a possibility, but splitting that position in two different jobs. Did the three of the Bethel individuals that are coming over or on board now, do they have any skill sets that would pertain to any of this?
One does, but as a career firefighter in a different city, has kind of a different schedule. He was one of them that I alluded to earlier that may have some interest, but hasn't indicated as such yet.
Okay. Well, yeah, as I went through the package, the full-time salaries were a sticker shock. I'm not for expanding business. And again, we were talking about our town, and we tried to be pretty prudent with the money that we have here. And again, 8,500 people, there was some concerns raised and concerns answered as far as when the second assistant chief was filled. And we did it on a work session. We did it we did it with, good justice. We followed it through, vetted out pretty carefully. So,
Well, that's technically not his. title.
Captain.
Right.
well, that's what I meant, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Just
So,
saying.
I guess I'm with the mayor, let's kind of go slowly here and take a look at this. This is our first exposure to it.
Yep.
If the gentleman is willing to help us out, which is, God bless him, to October. As far as bending any policy rules or whatnot, I'd like to stay far away from that as well. With the resources that we have in front, on your staff already, I would think there'd be some solutions to be able to be found, especially if you split it into the public education part. To me, it's important, but not as important as the fire inspection part. We also have Vista Prairie coming online, which will take someone's time, even though it's a state situation. We still have a local jurisdiction obligation we have to fulfill, so. I'd say we step back and take a breath, and the captain wants to help us for a while, that's awesome. Whatever costs, it costs. But, take a second look at this at our next work session, which I'm sure Kate's got up her sleeve somewhere down the line.
We can do that.
Let me just take a peek here. Cause Nowland is, Nowland's now settled down. Again, we brought the assistant on for you because Nowland was taking up quite a bit of time. So that's kind of slowed, not needing as much of your attention, but again, we got other stuff internally that's popping up. That is all I have for now. I'm sure we'd have more, we could bring it up again in another session.
Hate to add to your list. I'm just curious, continued discussion later on. I am kind of curious to immediate surrounding communities here. What are they doing for inspections?
So East Bethel has a full-time fire inspector and back to Councilmember Faunus's point, one of the recommendations that did come out of their study was to add another full-time person as well. So Nowland has no fire inspections going on. Now that I've left, I don't know that the new fire chief has picked those up as of yet. I can't speak for Oak Grove. Andover's in the same position where they're looking to potentially bring on another fire inspector down there as well. So I think we're all kind of in the same boat. One of the postings that I included was from Spring Lake Park. There's such a demand out there right now for this type of role and not nearly as many qualified candidates.
So most of them, maybe even the majority of them are doing it in-house, you're telling me.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
You all right, Derek?
I don't know if we gave
No,
you some
I-
direction or not. or-
I think, I guess, to clarify for me, council's direction is there's more of a comfort level to keep it as an internal part-time position with exploring at potentially splitting the two job responsibilities between pub ed and fire inspection and see where we go from there.
Kind of going back to what Joe was talking about too, a little bit with Tim's position, a little
Yep.
bit seeing, I don't know, just.
I don't know what his capacity is. Like I said,
Right.
he was two, now he's one. Not that, like I said, I didn't assume he was sitting there throwing a ball at the
No.
wall, waiting for a call, but. The capacity of it, I guess, and Metro West, I don't know why I hear inspection, I think inspection. So,
I know they do plan review, so.
no, that makes sense. So,
You got
And
any-
then-
You got any questions for us?
I do not. I think that's something that, and that's the direction that I was looking for, right? I didn't want to get into the budget season without really understanding where council sat on this, because it's certainly an area of our department that's growing. And we want to make sure that we're in front of it rather than behind it. And then we'll wait on any formal direction. Do we not want Captain Sturzel to stay on until October at this point? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'd love him to, but if he's going to have to move, I don't think, like, it's the policy is the problem, right? That's the legal ramification, I think, for me, that's a stickler.
I just want to be able to provide direction to him because he's been asking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think, well, myself and Kevin said no policy,
I would
so,
agree.
and, yeah. I think that's your direction, unfortunately, but definitely thank him, we appreciate him.
yeah, like I said, I didn't want to make either one of these decisions in a vacuum, so. I appreciate the feedback.
On to tax increment financing, that's you, Kate.
Yes, Mayor and Council, before you tonight is just some greater information on the TIF. A little bit on the process and on how it works. So the North Shore Development Project, as anticipated, has dropped off a TIF application. It is sent to Ellers at that time. I put in here the packet that had been given to the EDA. Really just discussing, what the process is, what the expectations, some of our policy requirements. And then I attached a few sheets that talk about this project kind of as an estimate. If they were to go forward, the amount of taxes, the amount of fees that we would collect, not only for a financial impact of one-time fees, but then in regards to the ongoing project gains, just some general data that's given to cities in regards to the use of TIF and why. And then some slides that are provided by Ellers. Ellers is the agency that does the underwriting for TIF when it comes to the city. So they have to not only identify that the funding is needed, but Ellers has to do the but-for test to ensure that the project would not move forward but for it. One of the reasons I brought the discussion tonight is if this project does not get TIF, they will not build. And just as we don't want to spend money as an agency, we don't want them spending a bunch of money to move forward with something that's not supported by council. So just look, any questions, I'm here to help answer them. If we need Ellers to come in with some real technical questions, I'm happy to get, them in here as well. But just have the general discussion, let you know that it is in process and answer any questions.
Amy?
Oh, no, I don't want to start. Somebody else has to
All right, Joe.
start. Sorry.
Well, it also determines the length.
Correct.
And you mentioned we had one property that was on the TIF that's now off,
Correct.
and they didn't go to full term,
Correct.
and a lot of them don't go to full term.
Correct. Mayor and Council, it's very typical for these projects to refinance, much like when we worked with Vista Prairie, that 8 to 10 year point. Especially with where interest rates are now, I think if there were some market shifts in interest rates, they would definitely be looking, because we're a very small portion of the overall debt. So it is very typical for them to refinance a few years in.
And I'm not a huge fan of TIF, although I'm not like hardcore 100% against it, like the abatement. I think we have to look at too, the benefits versus, the risk versus benefits, so to speak. Just like Vista, I think it's something that we've heard people talk about a lot. Granted, that's just an abatement, which to me is a lot better than a TIF, in my opinion, but that's, again, just my opinion, but I'm not hardcore against it. I know these buildings, for whatever reason, can't build it. It bothers the hell out of me that banks won't give them the funding they need unless we do this, where it's like, what the hell are you in business as a bank for? But that's just kind of what's in my crowd, but I don't know, I'm not happy about it, but I'm not, like I say, hardcore against it, so I'm kind of a wild card when it comes to if or against, and if you need an answer from me tonight, I'll end up giving you one.
Kevin?
I know when I went over this a couple years ago, and again, like Vista, I had a grasp on it. Now I kind of have a grasp on it. If there was a $25 million project and we didn't TIF them at all, and they were coming in TIF free, you've got examples of the SAG, let's see. The
those look
water
great.
and the sewer and whatnot. So we're foregoing, we're gonna take a percentage of what we would normally get on an annual basis of the property taxes that they would be paying to the city. They're still gonna pay the SAC and WIC up front. That's a separate situation from the TIF portion of it.
Correct. So Mayor and Council, they would come in and they would pay, so upfront costs. They would pay the WAC and SAC and the development fees. And it would create a base tax. So right now it's tax exempt. We're not making a dime off that property.
Because we own it.
Because we own it. When they come in to do TIF, what happens is they would create a base. The city would get the base tax. And then the city in our policy also gets 10%. So essentially they are going to get 90% of the new tax base. And we will get taxes, because a base has to be created because there isn't one now. So we'll get a base plus 10%.
So on page 23 at the top, it says based on a household of 2 typical monthly charges. This isn't real numbers pertaining to this project, or it is?
So Mayor Council, it's a little bit of both. When we're looking at like the number of units, I used 120 because
Sure.
that's the anticipated number of household units. But if they put in a swimming pool, if they put in a car wash, if they put in, they're talking about a community room with some space,
Street
all of
department.
that will continue to add. So I would say 120 minimum. But if you put in a swimming pool, there's 4 more. You put in a car wash, there's 2 to 3 more. So it just grows. But that would be, if they only had 120 units, that would be our WAC and SAC gained. The park dedication is actual, that is not going to change. And then the building revenue costs, those are the actuals if it was a $25 million project. So that 940,000 is pretty accurate. The only thing that could change is the whack and sack units could actually go up.
And then 10% fee to the city, that, again, we're getting our basics covered, but we get our payoff at the end of their term, if say it's and would would a TIF be, how many, years did you have on this? It was
It varies.
Yep, so Mayor and
26 years,
Council,
that's 26 years as opposed to the 8 or 10 that we agreed on with Vista?
no, so Mayor and Council, the 26 years is the maximum for a housing TIF district. So I just use that because if Ellers deems that they need 26 years, they're eligible for up to 26 years.
Right.
But Ellers could come back and say, you need 12. So
Exactly.
that's completely estimated. But what happens is, say they're built, the $25 million project, and I think I used, what did I use for a tax base? I don't remember. So we would get on an annual basis, we would
Like 16.
retain that base plus the 10%, and then we would be paying them back the rest, correct? Because it's a pay-go.
Yes. There's it's like almost like a loan, you know,
Right.
and every time we get the taxes in, we have to calculate and we have to turn around and we have to pay them this, and then we kind of amortize it. If the taxes, the amount that we spend or we send back to them brings that balance down, and maybe we pay it off in 5 years, maybe 10 years. But it cannot not go any longer than what the term is set.
Right.
So if at the end of that term, we haven't paid off that balance, we're free and clear.
And then on page 28 is a perfect example of your chart, the graduation. We're waiting, we're helping, we're waiting, and then at the end of the term, well, that's basically what it is. We're engaged for a while, then we're finally getting married, so. It's the dowry right now, so. Okay, again, I'm like Joe too, I'm not totally excited about it. I did have an individual tell me that, and I haven't gone by the property, it looks pretty cool from here, but now that you can see it wide open and whatnot, it looks like a nice viable, I mean, somebody with a vision, an entrepreneur with a vision come in and say, this is pretty cool. Do we have to give it to these people? And you've been working in this for so long, and you've seen the commitment that these people have. I guess I'd be interested in what you have to say as well, as far as if this suitor doesn't work out, will two of the suitors come along and say, this has got some potential here, this is pretty awesome. I mean, we're already doing the trees and we're gonna pay for the road and get the road and get that portion done, but what is your thought on this as far as this suitor compared to now that it's wide open spaces? What do you think?
All right, no.
So Mayor and Council, so the EDA is under a purchase agreement with this current individual, this developer. If this developer walks, that property, both zoning and highest and best use, is really multifamily. It could sit, it could have somebody come along right behind it. It could end up sitting. It's really hard to tell, both between where the market is headed right now, alongside the cost of development, and then just the general parcel itself is what it is a higher density parcel. So it wouldn't be commercial. It doesn't have any street front, so we don't have any commercial interest.
So it's made for stacked living rather than individual pods.
One of the whole reason I think we're talking about this too is because, for whatever reason, the banks decide that multifamily living is leaning more towards TIF. Right?
What do you mean?
I worded that poorly.
I'm trying to catch
So
up.
it's hard to get approval from the banks if you want to build a multifamily property or building without getting the TIF approval as of late.
Mayor and Council, so the financial institutions do put a lot of that back on the communities, that they want that local community investment. And that's what we ran into. So the only difference between tax abatement and TIF really is that with the TIF, it guides some rent limits, which the rent limits guided by TIF are still higher than our market value, but essentially they're the exact same.
Right.
It's just one comes with a string that a certain percentage of units have to remain guided based on income. But part of the challenge as well is they can't even put the rents at that level because our local market isn't that high. So they kind of have an odd gap, even using TIF.
And is that string only for the life of the TIF? So
Correct.
once they refi, they could charge $1 million for an apartment or two.
If they could get it in our area,
Right.
yes.
That's an interesting point. There's a ceiling on the rent they can charge on a TIF bill situation?
Correct. So there is an income restriction, which then puts a string on the percentage of rent allowed. But our market rent is still below the income and market rent of a TIF. So,
It's because we got $2 generals. Sorry.
so essentially our people, our residents will be the ones renting it because essentially that's the market,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
So back to the answer to my question then, you said it's more built for an apartment situation than an individual housing situation. But the what you've seen out there and whatnot, cause again, if this suitor didn't work out or we decided against TIF, and is it viable for somebody else might be saying, boy, I've been waiting to see what this looked like the way it was, or it's like, maybe not. But
Let's
I'm
get a
not holding you
Ramaker
to
chimed
it,
in
that
on
you're
Facebook.
got a crystal ball.
They're
Yeah,
not
I was the
happy.
same, mayor, council, maybe not. I think I'm even watching this developer closely with the cost of materials and the financing uncertain, right? We're talking about recessions, we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about all these things that make it very difficult for developers. We touch base very frequently to make sure we're all on the same path,
Mhm.
but if this developer was to walk away, then if an apartment came behind them, they're going to ask for the same.
Yeah.
Apartments do not build without TIF subsidies, and that's probably pretty stable for the last 15.
This is an if and a maybe, but the Hiller property, that gentleman also claimed that he builds nice stuff and yada, yada. And then that's the first thing the neighbors all ask about Section 8 housing or, he said, no, I'm not doing that because I'm not taking any government money. He said, mine aren't that way, but yet he could still come with his hand out to us saying,
Mayor and council, he definitely could apply. One thing that we would want to work very closely with Ellers on though, is if we were to approve North Shore and we have the tax abatement, we're going to have to be very careful. Anybody can apply. We could have somebody apply for, economic development. There's like 4 uses, remediation, cleanup. We don't have to accept them, but we would, and that's where we want to know sooner than later, because all of these steps are very expensive for both the city and the project to get too far down. We've got to give good guidance on.
So are you saying we're opening up a can of worms, so to speak, to where you're gonna get all these developers showing up asking for? I know there's another gentleman that by the church over there that mentioned TIF to me when I met with him, and I don't know if he's still even around.
No, mayor and council. So the other project came in asking for TIF and then came back asking for all of the whack and sack to be forgiven.
Oh, wow.
And when I pretty much said, no,
are you high?
we can't afford both, he has gone away.
Okay.
The thing is you still have to have the population to fill an apartment. An empty apartment has no value. So if we had Weaver that wanted to build 2 more and all of a sudden we say we have 320 units, are there the people even here to live in it? Right? I mean, who lives in apartments? Our college kids, our high school kids when they move out,
Could afford it
right?
these
People,
days.
right?
Jeez.
They found a
Seniors.
study, a lot of the retail restaurant workers, right? There's a pattern. You have to have the jobs to support the residency. You have to have the residency to support the commercial base. We could build 100 apartments and give them all TIF, but you're not gonna fill them.
Right.
So they have a market study. They have a market study that supports what they're building in units. But if Weaver come along to build 2 more, his market study in 5-10 years may only show we can support 1 more apartment. And then he has to figure out what to do with that other plot. So there's an apartment that is approved on the Rum River Bluffs, and they're in the same boat. They could come in 5, 10, 15 years, and if we don't have the residents to support a market, they're just not going to build an apartment. They have to be able to fill them. So I think all of these kind of predetermined conversations with these other apartments, they may or may not ask for the funding, but they may or may not build based on the residents that can.
Where is that project with the Bluffs right now? Is it still kind of just waiting for a new?
Mayor Council, so we have a new developer, and we're hoping to actually get that preliminary plat finalized, or not preliminary plat, but the final plat finalized this spring.
Thank you.
Can a city be overburdened by too much TIF? Say the Hiller property does build, and is there, does Ellers ever caution about, or have you seen the city's fall victim too much out there? I mean, our next conversation is gonna be about sewer and water and whatnot. If you limit yourself in what you can and can't do, can you not then support what's being built? Say the market says, yeah, build them, but then the city's going, we're starving for, we've lent some money out here, so to speak, and can you be overburdened by TIFs?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, Ellers has definitely got their pulse on these. And I had a conversation with Nick, I want to say a year or two ago when we started this project conversation. And there isn't a cap on how many we can do. However, it does fall back on what's reasonable for our budgets, for our levy. If we're, Ellers knows what situation we're in. If all of a sudden we had 4 applications, they may look at Darcy and go, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So we work with them very closely for that guidance to make sure we're not put in a financial.
I think if you built too many, like you say, you wouldn't be able to fill them, or you're gonna end up, if you do fill them all, then we gotta add on to the plant. Or you have to, which costs the people that are on it, obviously, and then, you're also, your emergency services, you're taxing too.
Yeah, all right, that's all I had, Keith, thank you.
Well, most of my questions already got answered. But yeah, I think we have to look at that. Obviously, we don't want it to sit vacant for a long time. We have to be a little bit careful. I'm also not fully in favor of TIF, but I do understand that there's a place for it when we need it. We haven't handed out a lot historically, so I guess, we know that the only way this place is coming in is if we give it, so I guess we really have to sit and figure out if that's something, because like Kate said, we can't let them get too much further down the path, nor can we go much further down without giving them this answer, so yeah, I guess if that's the path we're going down, I think we just have to be realistic about what other places are gonna be asking for TIF and how we're gonna be looking on these.
I'm just gonna say up front, I really don't have much problem at all with it being an apartment. But that being said, I'm gonna tell you flat out, Kate's heard this already from me, I'm 100% opposed to TIF. And I'll tell you some of my biggest reasons why. I've got a lot of them, but one of my biggest ones is if I go and build a house on a bare lot, the city's gonna get taxes from that lot, ongoing taxes. I don't get any tax increment financing. I don't get any help for investing in my city. The other one is, I love the page 28 that Kevin highlighted there. I love it. We as a taxpayer are supposed to wait for, let's just say 10 years. We wait. Do you think the investors aren't making a return? The private investors aren't making a return in that 10 years? Like, investors touched that. So we as the taxpayers, we as the citizens are supposed to sit here and wait for 10 years or 15 years while the investors make their money off the project. It really just becomes a game of who wants the return on their return on investment. So yeah, there is an investment. Let's just say 10 years. I don't know what it's going to be down the line, but the investors aren't waiting for their return on it. So if a private person wants to come in there and build that apartment building and they follow all our rules and regulations, more power to you. I think that's fine. But I look at this already, and what I don't know is, so Kate, you referenced that the EDA did do a purchase. How much did they buy the lot for?
So Mayor and Council, the EDA sold the lot to them for $5,000.
There's their tax break right there, in my opinion. You want a tax break? A lot like that for $5,000? And not to mention, we're clearing the trees on it and everything else. So for me, and then the other one, what Joel alluded to it a little bit here too, is yeah, we can see a potential market study that says that they'll fill it and that there'll be a return on our investment in 10 years. What we're not talking about, like Joel alluded to, is more wear and tear on our roads in the meantime, everything else. And we're
The
just
traffic.
traffic and and you know, of course, when you put people in a higher density population, of course, there's gonna be some crime, or there's gonna be some fire calls going there, and we take it, we take the hits. And the investors make their returns. So I have nothing against North Shore. I don't mind them asking. I get it. And TIF is a widely used tool. I get that. But sooner or later, we've got to stop this game. As a state, as a nation, we got to stop this game of giving TIF money to, and then North Shore doesn't get it here. So North Shore goes next door and says, will you give me TIF money? And they go to the next community and say, will you give me TIF money? This game's got to stop. Either the project's economically feasible or it's not. And if it's not economically feasible, it shouldn't be on taxpayers for a perceived long-term return when the investors are making their return. So I got nothing more, sorry. But sorry for the rant.
You're tired.
I have just a couple questions. First of all, I agree with everything Mark said. But I'm the first one to say that I need like training, TIF training for dummies, because I don't understand it. Every question everybody asked made sense. But I'm wondering why we didn't have this discussion before the EDA voted to sell the property for $5,000 or, or whatever the amount was, that was the amount. But if the project won't go forward with North Shore, did this conversation happen last year and I didn't know it? Maybe it did, but I'm just wondering the timing of it. And, I just, that was one of the questions I wrote
And
down.
can I answer that?
Yes, please.
So roughly, about 2 years ago, we did
Okay.
have a meeting and all 5 were in favor of using TIF and moving forward with the project.
Okay,
And that's what got us to today.
okay. Okay, I didn't know that. And then, so does it mean that the apartment building is Section 8? If there's those income rules, that's totally
Mayor and
not
Council,
it?
it is not a Section 8 building. It would be TIF supported, which is
Okay.
Clear as mud.
And then maybe this happened, but I understand that the property was owned by the EDA, which I also need EDA for dummies lesson on that, but if the property was owned by the EDA, did anyone else have an opportunity to buy it? I mean, was it listed for sale? Was it, what did we do to like give others an opportunity to know that, hey, if you buy this building for $5,000, we'll clear it for you and we'll give you tip. Like what did we do to market it?
Yep, so Mayor Council, it's been for sale for 5 years,
Okay,
along with the corner, for redevelopment.
okay,
So we reviewed a townhouse project, but they came in with far too less units that it really didn't make sense and it wasn't allowing it to go through. So that was turned down
oh,
by council.
there was a townhouse unit that wanted to go right there?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
Go,
no.
continue on.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I just had a quick follow-up question on that. So it was the $5,000 purchase of it contingent upon it going through? I mean, so technically, let's just say it falls apart. Does North Shore own it?
No, Mayor Council, if much like when you buy a house, if their financing falls apart,
Okay.
the property comes back to the
Gotcha.
EDA.
Thank you.
If they can't get a TIF, we still have it.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. I guess those are my questions. Well, my only other question is we talk a lot about the traffic right here. This sounds gonna be nice. We talk a lot about the traffic here. I'm good, Jenny. I just slid over. We talk a lot about the traffic and it being so close to Bridge Street and Ambassador here, our main intersection. How is that gonna affect the traffic to have 120 unit, right? Building so close. And if we're gonna put in really new streets through there, that, you know, that one is like a dirt road, I know already, but it's not being used now as a street. And if we're gonna put in new streets so close to the intersection, I don't know, that concerns me.
So Mayor and Council, both access points of this development are county, and they have been involved from the beginning, not only with the road, with the St. Francis Forward, with the design standards, and with multiple concepts. So they are very aware of it. They don't see this intersection as an issue. The only thing that they want to see is that the individual property access go away, and that's why we're not allowed to put another driveway onto Bridge Street, and everything will be funneled, hence the new road that's going in. All of that property has to funnel through that single access point of that road. All of the driveways from the properties has to dissolve. With that, the county is not concerned. And then they are looking at this intersection, but they have, that's their only concern, was that we could not have the individual properties. It had to funnel to the new road. But they have seen all of this and been involved with us since the St. Francis Forward in 2018. They are aware of the density. They are aware of the planning, the road connections and everything. So.
The other, I have one other question, Mayor, for me. Kate, what's the estimated value of this parcel? If it was located in Isani and or Cambridge, the same square footage, locations might be kind of interesting, but what would be its estimated value elsewhere?
Mayor and Council, I would have to research that.
Just ask Michelle that one.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't know. What it's retail value or taxable value?
No, resale
Resale
value,
value?
again, for, as a clean, cleared piece of property somewhere else, what's its value? I mean, we EDA wrote a PA purchase agreement for 5,000. Again, what would it be worth somewhere else? I mean, I get what Mark and Amy are saying, but again, we've had, what's it cost the city currently per year for us to own it? We pay property taxes to the county for it.
No, Mayor and Council, that is not generating, nor do we pay in. We have to maintain it. We have to keep it clear. We have to get access, you know, the road, the clearing of it is the road. We can't even sell these parcels without these access points. So that'll be our greatest expense going forward, is maintaining that road, just to try to sell these two properties.
Sure. Do we have an estimated cost of what the road, idea of what the road cost to put it through? Curb and gutter and whatnot?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, approximately about 1.1 million right now.
And the $5,000 purchase price, and we've got it ready for them. They got a road in there and.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would be intrigued to know what that's worth elsewhere. I know we've had it this long and stuff, but I hate to go too far backwards to go forwards, but it'd be nice to know.
Well, I'm sorry, didn't the Hiller property, isn't that 5 acres? I mean, how much did the realtor list it for when they listed it?
So Mayor Council, when we list the EDA properties, I believe we had that one for 100 and something. Again, it's based on use. So the Hiller property with a commercial front is a very different market value than a back lot such as this one.
That's true.
You go back in Zillow, Amy, and find out. I think I don't want to say the amount. I saw it one time,
Yeah, I saw it too.
but I don't remember what it
remember.
was.
What did we, so this
Property
proposed,
tax will
this
tell
pro
us.
project here, what did we buy that for then? Back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever that was, what did we as a city spend on that?
Mayor and Council, I would have to look back at all of our, I think we had under 200,000 for acquisition and demo.
That's fine, just the ballpark.
Yeah,
is-
it
Good.
was under 225 or 200 for both.
And we bought it because
To help guide our
Or
development,
was it owned by someone else and they?
Yep.
the family
So Mayor
owned
and
it, and that
Council,
was a cluster.
the family owned it. It was dilapidated and much like what we're seeing with the building off Ridge Street now, that dilapidation doesn't move. So what we did is the EDA acquired it. We removed the old house.
Started to become a hazard too, with kids playing in it. and police
Yeah,
having to
clean it up
respond.
and then with the whole point of redevelopment. It was purchased for redevelopment.
Any other questions? So I mean, I don't know, do you want us to like take an unofficial vote here or what are you looking for?
If it's not moving forward, I need to know. If you're not going to approve TIF, I need to know so I can tell them it's not moving forward. So I guess some type of unofficial vote or,
I like the sack and whack part of it. That's really the biggest part that I like about it. That's the benefit to risk ratio. I like your points too, Mark. I think that's part of my issue too, but it's also too, how do you move forward? Because if you're gonna end up, this is my conundrum that I'm sharing with you, I guess. So you get somebody, say you get somebody that has the money, you know, Trump comes in, says he wants to build a Trump hotel there, awesome, right? The price you're gonna have to cut if you're gonna be a high-end person, you're gonna wanna get that money back too, so then our residents can't live there. So we become a chicken or egg type of situation where it's, can we put affordable apartment there? And the only way to do that is through TIF. Well, in theory, right? Otherwise, somebody's gonna come in with the money that wants to make money,
And they're just gonna make more money.
and then how is that gonna work too? So, and is this the market for that person to build in? And I think that's the conundrum that I find ourselves in. And that's where I say TIF is, to me, it's a tool, but I'm with you in principle, but at the same time, it's like I say, I waver on that a little bit.
Here's where I struggle, and I mean, Amy kind of alluded to it more. I definitely admit it. I gotta learn more about the EDA. I personally, I'm not a fan of city playing EDA or TIF or abatements. I don't think the city should be in the business of buying, selling land and
Real estate.
et cetera. So, I mean, I have to learn a whole lot more just about how EDA operates. I don't know a lot at this moment. But I just don't, it's kind of what I'm saying. It's a principle for me, and I have nothing against North Shore. If I was North Shore, I'd be asking us for TIF too. So this isn't personal at all. I totally get it. But I'm just tired of this game, and because I'm a small player, when I build my house, I don't get it. Or if I'm the wrong business, I'm a dentist. I don't get it because the city doesn't really want a dentist. So you got all the other businesses who don't get a break. But you're gonna to try and drive this project forward. And my argument would be, yeah, sack and whack, you're right. We would gain there, absolutely. We gain on water usage and blah, blah, all that. There'd be a plus side, but we're not talking about the negative side. We spent $200,000 on the lot.
Yeah, we're losing there.
We spent how much money clearing the trees? And then we're gonna, on top of it all, we're gonna give them whatever, a TIF, a 10-year TIF, let's just say hypothetically. No, to me, it's too much. So I'm sorry to Kate and the people who put the time into it. I'm sorry for North Shore developer, but I'm just telling you right out front, I'm a solid no. So I think Kate does need guidance also. I don't know who wants to go next. Go ahead, Paul.
Mayor,
Yeah.
Mayor and Council, one other thing I think that needs to be considered in this situation too, just sitting here listening, is the actual, our enterprise fund, right? We'd have another 120 some users in that small space. That's also something to be considered, I think, in this situation. If it were townhomes, if it were lower density, we would have we could add nowhere near that many customers. So that's also something to think about in this situation. So, thank you.
And that helps the schools too. I mean, presumably there's gonna be kids. And, that helps the school to, generate more students.
Yeah, they'll be jumping over the fence so the people.
Yeah, totally. Like the lady said last time. But, I had another question. Shucks.
Sorry.
Can't think of it.
Anybody else want to, I mean, we do need to give Kate and these guys some guidance. I mean, it's not like it's a super formal vote, but we should let them know.
I'm with you. So it's up to the three of them. Oh, I did, I remembered my question. How many other projects are currently on the TIF spectrum with us? Like
Like upcoming?
upcoming, no, like the ones that, how many have we done in the last 10 years?
10 years we haven't done
So
it.
Mayor and Council,
We had one, but it fell through.
correct, we haven't done any other subsidy programs. When was Turtle Ridge?
The
20 years
abatement.
ago?
That was before I came.
2004?
Oh, okay.
2010, so it was existing when I came in 2010.
Vista
Okay,
Prairie's abatement is probably about the only thing that you can compare it to recently,
okay,
when that's just the city side of it.
okay. That was my question.
I'm gonna go with Mark and Amy. I would say, no at this time. At 1.1 million, again, our next conversation is gonna be what the future holds for the existing stakeholders as far as our sewer and water goes and whatnot. This is some heavy stuff and the citizens are there's gonna be some pitchforks and torches going on. If the street was less money, which I know streets cost money, but again, 5,000 is a good buy, and I know you've done a ton of work on it, and I've always been on your side on pretty much 98% of what's going on here. But 1.1 million, put a street through, and then, and I understand TIF is part of living, the economic living of this, but I think in this case, my gut tells me to, pass on it.
Well, I just wanted to add one more thing too, Mark and Kate, we went to a meeting last week with the school district about trying to get 47 and Bridge Street to connect. And you mentioned that the county or state said that this intersection will fail. I don't know what that means, fail, but by 2030, which I actually would think it would be sooner.
Sinkholes.
Because we just have so much traffic right here that when, I drive my kids to school every day, my 13s, and then we go by and they're like, oh, look at all the trees. The trees are all gone. I'm like, oh yeah, they're gonna put an apartment there.
You're gonna round them.
And again, my teenage girls said, what do we need an apartment there for? There's so much traffic here already. And I just feel like it's so close to this intersection. And I just don't feel like it's the right time for that. And it's just gonna add more traffic. And I think we just have a traffic problem right here.
But the thing is that it's gonna be high density. It's not gonna make sense for anything else.
Well, I agree
So-
with that. I agree with that.
Just because we say no to this TIF doesn't mean that 6 weeks later, somebody else doesn't come in and say, I can afford. That's not gonna alleviate that traffic issue, no matter if we TIF it or not.
That's true.
Not gonna solve that. And we
That's
can't
true.
just sit there saying, well, we don't wanna do anything for 30 years with this lot because this intersection is gonna fail. We can't run our city that way either. So, I mean, and why do we need apartments? Because we don't have enough places for people to live. That is the bottom line. People who want to come to St. Francis cannot find housing. Now, they may move into an apartment for 6 months to a year and be able to find a home. That is a lot of what happens. So, and I have heard we don't need more apartments. We really don't have the apartments that you have around here, if you're looking to move here, you are not. You're on a waiting list for 5 years to get in an apartment.
I agree with that.
And you can't. So, I mean, why do we need, because we need housing. Why do we need it there? Because that's what makes sense. That's what we're never gonna make it if we put single family homes or townhomes back there.
We can put a
It's
Tesla
not-
dealership
It's
back?
not probably feasible. So that
Okay. Elon.
section is really meant for that high density. That's what it needs to be. Whether we like it or not, we don't have a lot of room in this city to build anything. We're running out of places to build until some of our elderly decide to pass along and their families decide to sell off is what's gonna happen. And even then, you don't know. So,
They're moving into Vista.
The older
sure,
people.
yes, the older people. We hope they are, but we can't guarantee that either because again, we
You got your
hear from
numbers.
that. Can we afford? If it's more for them to move into Vista than to stay in their homes, elderly people
They're
aren't,
gonna do it.
they aren't spending that money. So we have to think about that. I don't like, I'm not a huge fan of Tiff either, but I trust Kate's judgment. I trust the fact that she knows that whoever comes in next with an apartment, they're gonna ask for Tiff too. So we're either gonna just say, you know what, we're gonna flush all this money down the toilet and let it sit there. Or we're gonna have to figure out how we work with somebody.
Well, and Ellers
I don't-
has to qualify.
And,
them too.
yeah, and so maybe that is the
More of
next step.
that.
If we have to have Ellers take a big look at this and tell us whether or not it's even feasible. Because I don't think we can just sit here and say, we don't like TIF, so we're not gonna do it. I don't think that's how we can run it.
I don't think it's the fact that we don't like TIF, but I would say my card for the development up on the north side of, if somebody's coming through, wants to build an apartment there.
TIF, you'd rather
That's
do it
TIF full
there.
speed ahead there, baby, cause I know what else is coming in that big parcel. There's a bigger payback. And if you're gonna, lay it down, that's where I put my.
The
money.
bluffs.
Or not that,
Right.
it's a maybe, everything here is a maybe, everything we talk about is a maybe.
Yeah, it is,
But-
and that's a hard thing, and it's like figuring out,
Well,
so.
there's no limit to the TIF, but like you're saying though, too, it puts more taxes
Right,
on,
and we
like,
don't,
to Mark's
we don't
point,
wanna
that's.
keep doing that either, but I'm just saying, if we. I'm, six here, six there, I really don't wanna do TIF, but I also kind of feel like if Kate's sitting there telling us that any building coming in there or anything wanting to go there is gonna ask for TIF, then we have to be willing to say, we're gonna put in this road for $1.1 million, and we have to be willing to let it sit there for a very long time.
But maybe the next suitor would have more, bring more to the table than,
Maybe,
The
but
purchase price
again,
and or-
right now, the
There's a lot
banks
next to
are
Casey's
not.
doing real
I mean, we
well.
have people coming from East Bethel getting help from cities 6 counties over to be able to get something to come in. It's the environment that we're in. I'm not saying we need to do it. I'm just saying we need to be realistic. We need to be realistic then that if we're gonna say, and what, just because we think that this part maybe is Tim Weaver gonna, or, Jeff Weaver gonna come ask us for money for TIF? There's a good chance he will. I mean, just knowing him.
But I mean, who, would?
But-
I mean,
but
to your
who
point,
wouldn't?
who would,
Who
right? I
isn't
wouldn't.
gonna come
If you're
ask
giving it
for
out,
it?
Certainly I'd ask for it.
But, so yeah, so I mean, if obviously if the rest of the council isn't in favor of the TIF, then we need to just move on, and Kate needs to tell North Shore that it's not happening.
Part of my hope is, kind of alluded to it though, I need to learn more about.
But do we need Ellers, then would it be helpful for you to have Ellers come in? Or if, I mean, because if you're,
To be honest,
if
probably
you're gonna
not.
say no anyway, and Amy's gonna say no way, Kevin's gonna say no anyway, we don't need to bring Ellers in. We don't need to waste their time or any of our staff time or any of our time to sit here and listen to Ellers present on why they would or would not be good.
Some of this goes back to my comment about the EDA though, too. I'm very confused about the EDA. We've been sitting on that lot for 5 years. It didn't even enter onto my radar till a year ago. Parcel the EDA owns down here on Bridge Street further down. Nobody knows it's for sale. I'm sure in the commercial market they do, but how do you get people talking about it? You put a sign on the lot saying commercial lot for sale, just like they did on the Hiller property.
Still got Steve's sign from the
Over there.
corner there you can put over there?
So I mean, to your point, kind of, who, I think is, well, number one, is I think the tree clearing, I think was probably a good thing regardless. I think it makes it much more visible, makes it much more visionable for somebody, but nobody knows in this city about these lots. Nobody in the city knows. So yeah, the commercial world knows, but we got nothing up. I've seen nothing. So how do we can say that we're sitting on these lots for 5 years? Well, yeah, some of it's because I don't think we're marketing them. We are, excuse me, we're
Have you
marketing.
been looking
them.
to buy property though?
No, I'm not. We're marketing them, but we're not
I'm
really.
just saying the people that are gonna see it are the people that are looking for it.
But
Or the people that are driving by and.
when I
gonna
drive,
tell
if I
their-
drive by it, I
Oh,
tell
yeah,
a
there's-
friend,
Yeah,
exactly.
you tell a
Who
friend
isn't to
and
that development.
that, right.
So I would hope that we could still sell them. I don't know why not, but yeah, it would be probably a struggle for them, but I'm sorry, Sarah.
No,
Solid no on this one,
No,
so.
and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think Kate probably has a pretty good feeling of where she needs to go with this.
well, you're a no, Joe, where you end up on the,
Well,
don't go Bauer on us either.
What the hell that
Fence
mean?
rider.
Well, I mean, like I say, I'm in the middle, but I would say if I had to make a decision gun to my head, I'd probably go for it for the fact that I think we're gonna end up sitting on an empty lot that we just paid to clear for nothing really. I mean, and that's not, I'm disappointed in myself hearing your question about the road and the cost that I didn't ask that at the EDA meeting as well. So I appreciate your question too, because that kind of gets my wheels turning to kind of make me want to say no as well, but
There are some
It's-
environmental reasons the trees need to come down too, I found out today, which are important.
okay.
So timing is everything. So now, but again, I think it's got, now you get anybody with an investor has a vision of what it can be rather than trees.
Well, just like with anything with the abatements or whatever, it's the long game you're playing because I'm looking at that in 5 years. You know, that we're gonna get those tax revenues. Are they gonna be taxing on our emergency services in the meantime? Absolutely, which that's the hardest part for me to swallow. I don't think an apartment would be as taxing as the assisted living and whatnot. But nonetheless, you're playing that long game and then seeing the sack and whack again. And I'm biased because we've been dealing with those water rates for a long time too. So that pushes me a little bit, but it doesn't. I mean, it's not. It doesn't make my decision. The people that I've heard complain about an apartment, personally, you know, obviously your daughter mentioned something about it, like why do we need one? And the people that I've heard are people that are on the well system that are not affected by it, to where again, when this whole thing was being built, we tried to tell people, like rural people, you will be affected one way or another. There's gonna have to be more development to fill up this plant. And that's part of why you should care. Granted, you might not pay the rates, but that's eventually we're gonna have to try to push development to try to fill up not necessarily try to fill up the plant, but you know what I'm saying, to get more users to help pay for it and whatnot. And that's where it's kind of like, that's the benefit, that and the tax dollars in 5, 10 years, 8 years, whenever the Ellers decides would be the number. So I mean, in this case, gun to my head right now, I'd probably be in favor of it, but doesn't matter. It's 3-2 and that's okay. Cause like I say, I'm on the fence. I could live either way with it. Darcy?
Oh, I'm sorry, I hadn't thought of the water part of it, so that's a good point. And sir, I agree with what you're saying. The traffic could be there anyway by somebody coming in, you know, we'd have to approve that they do that, but you know, is somebody coming in who's not asking for TIF, so
Well, it could be a
I
reason
get
for them to
that.
move the bus garage to get your road to.
Exactly, and so, you know, I just,
It's all what ifs.
and
but that
we
doesn't
shouldn't say
matter.
no to this just because we don't like TIF. I agree with what you said there.
But I mean,
Sorry,
go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I do want to say you have another piece to this coming up later in this meeting. It is the water and sewer rates. So
And
I
this
just
decision-
want to remind you that is a very big piece to this.
So you want us to pause this decision for them? That's not a bad thing.
I don't mind if we
I'm
want to come
sorry,
back and
I'm sorry.
revisit it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
No, she's right. There's an integral part in the coming in next subject line that, yeah.
Well, you're gonna talk about parks and then you're gonna talk about water and
Yeah.
sewer rates.
If the rest of you agree, I'm okay if we come
I'm
back
okay
to it
with
and
this.
change our minds, so. All right, let's just kind of put pause on this and get Paul out of here.
Cooler head.
Marriage out of here.
Mayor, I'm in for the duration tonight. so.
Go ahead.
Mayor and Council, before you tonight is a continuation of what we had talked about from the last work session. One of the things that needs to be considered is we go from complete underfunding the park fund to the possibility, if we were at the Curry Street funds from the old city hall, to a $1.1 million park fund. So we need to be strategic in how the money is spent. Staff stepped back, had a few different discussions, and was able to come up with a couple of different options. Moving forward, the first option would be what we had discussed, what council had discussed at the last work session, would be the purchase of the Rum River Church property. it would end up with just the purchase of property. There are two different things that council discussed, would be a demolition or possibly a remodel. We'd be looking at about 340,000 to purchase and demolish the building. If we were to, and this is a rough estimate, if we were to purchase it and remodel it for some more indoor, maybe a community center, whatever we had talked about, we're looking at probably closer to $600,000. The second option that staff discussed was we've been working with a engineering company to remodel the warming house area. A second thing that was also discussed is we also have a park that was put up in 1997 that residents have been complaining about for several years now. We could also remodel the warming house. We could phase it out in two different phases. The first would be to remodel the rink and then also remodel the warming house at the same time. And then we could also discuss putting something, remodeling the Rum River Parks as well. If we were to remodel the rink and the warming house, at that point, we would have a year-round facility. We could have people there year-round skidding in the winter. We'd also have an indoor facility. We could also have pickleball in the summer, along with the picnic shelter there. So council this evening, we'd like direction on 3 different things. Number one, staff would like council to make a final decision on the purchase of the Rum River property, whether to purchase it or not. The second discussion would be to inform staff where council would like the proceeds from the old city hall, the Cree Street building, to go. And the third is if we choose to move forward with which option, we need information on, do we want to move forward with the remodel of the if we purchase the Rum River property, do we remodel it, demolish it? Or if we go with the other option, we'd like a directive and how quickly we can move forward on the warming house side. So I hope I've explained that. We can work through it as we go here, so. A lot of moving pieces.
Can I just ask one quick question before I roll through everybody here? So when you said the existing park funds is $570,000.
Correct.
That is for maintenance, it's for,
No.
what is that for?
That can be used for, that is what council started, was it 2 seasons ago, Darcy?
Well, we've had 1 year this year.
No.
No,
No,
2 years,
it's 2,
sorry.
it's 2,
This,
Yep.
last year and this year,
correct.
we're getting a levy for it.
So the numbers there, Mayor, we have 570. And then the total potential was if we were to add the proceeds from the Cree Street building.
Sorry, I just had to ask that one up front. I'll just start down the road. Amy, you want to go first on this one?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of questions, except, so if we sell the Cree Street building, what are our options as far as where that goes?
I believe Kate can probably help me answer this a little bit better.
That, we can do.
Mayor and council, per charter, it can go to capital improvements or to retire debt.
So capital improvements really could be anything.
Parks, building,
Mayor and council, we have 4 capital improvements. Basically, it's parks, buildings, streets, and then capital equipment. And so capital equipment is funded, we have the levy going in there that we have taken care of. We have buildings, money going into that one, and then the street is taken care of by the levy and stuff that we have existing and the plan going forward. So this was our last capital improvement fund that kind of needed help, there's a long list of things that they want to do. So that's kind of what we came down to, designating it for that purpose.
Now we don't officially decide anything tonight. Is
No,
that
but it's the
correct?
same kind of thing. We're gonna
But
want to
same
get.
kind of thing,
Staff
kind of
direction.
direction.
Correct.
I like the idea of remodeling the warming house and making it a year-round facility. And if that had a community room, that would appease that, and we could figure out that's where I would probably go with it. I mean, it doesn't have to, but that's one other thing that we could make that work. I like the pickleball ball ideas. So you're saying that the ice rink would be year-round?
Correct,
Also?
Mayor and council.
Did I hear you right?
No.
No, no.
Year-round ice rink, no.
No, so however, it would be a year-round, you would use the ice rink year-round. So inside of the rink, we can
Oh,
put
I
6
remember.
pickleball courts. So that rink will be used year-round, is what I
Yeah,
meant, but yeah.
I thought it was a year-round ice rink. So,
Well, the
no.
warming house, you're talking about possibly using that as a duty.
Mayor and council, that's correct. So we're actually going to be, when the Cree Street building is sold, we're transferring all of that to the actual warming house. And it's actually going to give us a good, I think a good test run of how well we can utilize that warming house building. So correct.
So I'm sorry, third question, probably my question. So option 2, when you said 70, 92, 80, which includes the other playground,
Mhm.
but that is the same footprint other than the overhang, or does that increase the footprint of a warming house in option 2?
So that actually, that increases it doesn't increase the actual footprint. It does put the overhang on it and gives it the remodel, the facelift, the ADA bathrooms and so on.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I like that idea.
Anything else for me?
I probably wouldn't be up for the Rum River Boulevard building, the remodeling of it. I just don't see how that would work. I just, maybe it's just me, I just can't picture it, but I do understand the idea of, the missing piece of that lot. But I probably would be up for, if we purchased it, to demolish it.
So to be clear, just so I'm clear on this,
What
what
are the
you're,
other-
what you're saying,
Oh.
You gotta pick one or the other.
Oh.
That's what he
yes,
says.
thank you.
Well, I'll go with the warming
Option 2.
house.
Thank you.
Yeah, option 2.
Thank you.
That's me, but
That's good. Joe?
What are the benefits of buying that lot and then demolishing it?
The only benefit is to add park property.
Yeah. I have to say option 2 seems like it's a better ROI. That's all I have with that one.
I would agree. Heather?
I agree. I don't, after further thought, it's a nice piece of the puzzle, but at 250 or 275, they're firm on price. It's not worth it.
Oh.
I just wanna, I thought about, Cree Street, those proceeds all don't have to go to park stuff. Let's keep in mind, $1,110,000. And if you spent the 792 on phase 2, you still have 318,000 left over. I mean, just because we've come into some windfall, doesn't mean we gotta spend it all.
Right.
So my next question is, Rum River Woods, people have been asking and clamoring for it. How many people? And then also, how many other parks need attention? That haven't been clamored for.
That's a good question, yeah.
Mayor and council, I'm in the process right now of putting a realistic park CIP together. We're actually starting that discussion with Kate next week. Jeremy and I have been working on it now for a couple of weeks. We can stretch out some of these parks a little bit longer. But the one that was put up in 1997 is falling apart.
Which is Rum River or a different one?
Rum River. And as far as complaints, I know that last year I met with 3 different people on it. I'm actually having a neighborhood meeting on it because it's not just me talking to people. It's been Jen, it's been Jeremy. Well, they're in the neighborhood. People are talking to us about it. That park actually still has P-Rock which you cannot put that in anymore as a base for a playground. So that gives you an idea.
Why is that? Just curious.
That at that time, that P-Rock was acceptable underneath playground equipment. It no longer is because of the concussion protocols and stuff.
Hmm.
So,
All right,
Can I ask a question quick, Kevin?
no,
Um,
go ahead.
what's the cost though, when you're talking about falling apart? What, just a guess? Shot in the
Yeah,
dark,
so-
what would that cost to fix?
So I actually went out and 55,000, and that's an actual bid. We went out and got 2 bids on that park in 22.
So we'd have enough left over if we did option 2 to possibly address that one as well.
That's correct. And those two
That's right there.
pieces of the puzzle, the warming house and that part are the most in need of improvement.
And then when you say overhang, are you done, Joe?
Yeah,
Are
sorry.
you, the overhang, what do you mean? How big is an overhang on the?
Approximately, Mayor and Council, the overhang would be to the north side of the building. It's gonna overhang, I think it was 16 feet. It's enough to put, I believe we had 3 different picnic tables underneath of it.
Okay.
And the thought there was, if you were playing pickleball in the summer, you'd have somewhere to sit and have a picnic or whatever you want to do.
And then the extent of remodeling on the inside, you said you had to get ADA compliant.
Yes.
And again, as far as a community room, what would you put in there? Does it have indoor carpeting in there now? Or is it concrete?
No, Mayor and Council, right now, because it also serves as a warming house, it's a rubber mat floor, so your
Oh.
skates aren't damaged.
That's right.
But, so I had this discussion with our building tech as well, and it would actually work out quite well to have that as we could leave that floor in there. That's one of the savings
Okay.
pieces we could keep.
What if you have a walker?
All right.
Seriously, my grandma's,
Arcane.
my grandma's 89 and struggling to get around. Not that she'd come to the warming house.
Maybe she would have to.
So I want to play pickleball. It could happen.
Anyway,
I guess that'd be for phase 2 for sure. Keeping in mind that we still have 318,000 that doesn't have to go to parks. I mean, parks need addressed. We made a commitment 2 years ago to bolster that fund. But just because we got it all of a sudden doesn't mean we gotta spend it all of a sudden.
I'm gonna jump in on that real quick, just to your point. I totally agree with you. Let's just say it's the 300,000, obviously you don't want parks to be completely empty because
Right.
they gotta maintain some in there for the next project, a year or 2 years down the road.
Yeah.
But I think the rest of it, it should go into some sort of capital improvement fund, whether it be Bridge Street going through or something else. I think we gotta take some of it and put it into a capital improvement for some other project.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, I would be more leaning towards option 2 as well, just because I think that by doing that, we can offer some of those things that our community is looking to have. Whereas if we go with option 1, we add to our park, which in the long run probably will be to our benefit. But we buy that property, we demolish the house, then we have to sit there and wait to see what we can actually put back up there. So I think I wish we could do both, but we can't. So I would have to say that option 2, and then work with that, getting that park fixed, because I think it's been 4, maybe 5 years ago that I spent a whole weekend and I went to every one of our parks and I sent in pictures and I told them what was wrong with everything and nothing since then has been fixed because we didn't have anything there. So I think that by doing option 2, we're leaving us a little bit of wiggle room too, where we can do some of these improvements on our parks that our residents are saying, yeah, we have all these parks, but if I go there and the swings don't work, how do I play with my kids? If I go there and the slide is broken, or I go there and there's obscenities written all over our park equipment, what good does that do us? So, yeah, I would have to say, I would love to see us get that property, but at the price that they're asking and
It's a high price.
everything else, I just don't think that's feasible for where we're at. So option 2 would be.
I'm in favor of option 2 as well. And I just got one question. This is probably more a Kate question, because I know I asked it before. So these future or potential developments that are gonna happen, let's just say the one that they're hopefully gonna go to final plat with here, when they have that park dedication fund, where is that to go?
The mayor and council, park dedication is guided by state statute. It has to go to new or expanding. So our last big park that we used park dedication was for the creation of Cywick Park. So for the hockey rink remodel, we can't use park dedication because that's maintenance.
So it's hypothetical, I don't know what's in their dedication fund, but could you use that, say, to expand the park by buying the building, that house? Cause that's kind of like a, yes, and
Expanding the
you're
park.
expanding it. I mean, that's more of a gray area legal question, I guess, but that's what I was just wondering, throwing it out there is. Not that we even have enough in there, cause I don't even know what the hell's in there. but-
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Right.
Or exactly to your question.
You have 97,650 dollars.
Well, that answers that.
Do you think they'll accept that?
No, but I guess, so it may not even apply to this situation. The reason I bring it up is just to get it in everybody's head to think about this, because my attitude, what we don't need is more small parks that we can't maintain. I'd rather see us build that account up. If it's 91,000, let's just say we get park dedication fees. I get it that it can only be used for new parks. I'd rather it goes into that account so we can do bigger things rather than small park that are just, you can't keep up, can't maintain them. And the reality is we're a driving community out here and everybody pretty much has larger yacht lots to begin with, but you drive to destinations. So
My
it's just
lot's
a,
not that big.
it's more a comment that I would like to see in the future, park dedication fund go, just
Half
build
and
it to an
half.
account where we can actually do something substantial with it rather than build small parks that are a maintenance nightmare. So.
Well, like you said, Sarah, you spent a whole weekend going to all of our parks. It took a long time. So, to maintain all of those.
But segue aside, I definitely am in favor of option two. I mean, I like the idea of expanding the park with the house, but I agree, it's just not. It's not a good ROI, as Joe said, so
It would have confused the hell out of me when I read it. I'm like, why would you buy it and tear it down?
anybody else, any questions with you, Dad? All, you got anything else? You're,
That's all in my direction. Thank you.
thank you. So on to water and sewer rates.
Mayor and council, so I'll get us started and then I'll leave the technical pieces to Darcy and Paul, but I wanted to kind of walk through the packet. I know we put a lot in there. And this is really regarding the water and sewer enterprise funds. So this does not affect the levy, as the levy cannot aid in the expenses of the enterprise funds, if that makes sense. Each year we look at this, we sit down with Public Works, Darcy and I, and we go through all of the assets, we go through all of the projects and all of the unforeseeables. On the second page of your agenda, you'll see 3 tables. Each one of these is what the rates will look like based on the narrative. So how Darcy referenced back, we are now looking at number 1, which is rates based on doing a 3-year chloride reduction program and then minimal development. And what it's showing you on this is it would be roughly a 25, 20, and 10% increase for the next 3 years in our water and sewer rates. What's really hard is we need to balance that cost and the use, because if cost becomes too high and people stop using water, we have to raise the cost of the water again. So we
For the
get,
people that are using it.
yep, so we get in a really vicious circle that we do our best to try to
Turn
keep
your neighbor's
these
faucet
rates
on
down,
outside.
as it's a very delicate balance. In there, we talk about some of the slides the staff is proposing as part of this. So a couple questions, I'll back up a little bit. So it's getting late.
Yeah, I'm like,
So we talked about special
Maybe
assessments
these.
with Mark and on the last project and why we special assessed when we have a road program. So these accounts do not account for assessments. That assessments are really become the cash reserves then that roll forward to future projects. We talk about a chloride reduction program. This is in here to look at a solution to temporarily buy time. And this is for, and I'll let the guys get more technical with this, but this is really a placeholder in 2031 for some plant improvements. However, you know, doing a reduction program would buy us some time. I threw in some slides a couple pages back that really talk about some of the history. We look at, you know, when, like right now, we're not concerned about growth levels. So there is a slide though, that when we get to 75%, we start having these conversations. We have a long ways to go. And what's a little intimidating is we have a lot of units to fill up and we're still having to increase these rates. So we also go through some of the regulatory certainties. Our plant is set for about roughly another 9 years. So we're watching legislation constantly every year. We track that from the water side, the environmental side, and the wastewater side. One of the big budget impacts has to do with what's called our media, which is the filters. In 2028, we're looking at roughly $800,000 to dispose of this media because of the nature of its contents. The other thing we're watching very closely is that chloride program. And again, the chloride reduction program, if we don't keep our chlorides down or try to aid in keeping them down, would force us to do plant improvements before we're prepared or sooner than later. So the chloride program is kind of, like I said, a tool to buy us some time is what we're hoping. And then we move forward to, you know, the expansion of the water and wastewater facilities. And again, all of this, in the back, there's a little bit on funding. All of this comes down to rates. So if we expand a line, if we build a building, if we have to replace the roof, it all goes back to the rate users. So what we need to really look at tonight is just kind of roughly review this information. And see how, you know, those rates fall on that third page in regards, or second page in regards to where we're gonna land. Also give us some direction on moving forward with the 3-year chloride reduction program. Is that something you feel is valuable to use to buy time, right? You're committing, say, roughly $300,000, but at the same time, if it buys us 5-10 years, or is it, you know, we'll have to monitor that year by year. Maybe we have to add a 4th year if we're getting close, or so
Trust the MPCA is not gonna.
it's a trial, right? It's completely a trial. And then really understanding these rates, how we get there, how we are, you know, bound by inflation and tariffs and regulatory legislation and all of these things, that we could sit here tonight and do these 3-year rates. And it is the best guess of what we know today. But if they throw something on the floor and vote for a horrible bill this year, we could be back in the fall having to adjust again. These rates are set with our fee schedule in the fall, so we have time. But at the same time, if we're going to start something like the chloride program, I always want to call it chlorine and they keep correcting me. Chloride program, the sooner we can start that, the better for 2026, because we want it to be successful and we need to get those chloride levels down. So with that, I can answer questions, but Darcy and Paul are really in Parrish, are the technical experts. And we are here to answer any questions or walk through it, so.
Anybody particularly wants to start?
I can start. So just to put it out there. Just to put it out there, part of the reason we ended up in the situation we were in for the wastewater facility was because council did not listen to Darcy when she got here and talked about raising their rates. So not that I like these numbers because I hate them. According to this, we have to do the TIF and the chloride program. Just kidding. I'm curious, I guess, so the 25%, like that's just the water side. So I'm looking at these numbers and I don't, it says, you know, so right now, my house has been 6509 for a while, which is, I'm guessing, the lowest it can possibly be for water and sewer. Does that sound accurate?
I think I've seen less, but
Okay,
one step maybe.
it's been like steady, 6509, so maybe it's a step above. Anyway,
Probably are using 2,000 gallons.
that's what I'm guessing. I didn't look at the number, I just pay the bill.
People use one.
That's
Okay.
per month.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. So. If, I don't know, so 25% of the, like, what does it look like? Number one, what does it look like? So that would be the 2,000, so it would go up to 6543 roughly then per month?
Well, that's current.
Okay, so it would go to the next one, okay,
So,
7384.
yep, so, yeah, for somebody using 2,000 gallons, their bill would go from 65.43 to 73.
Okay, per month.
And then the next year would go to 84.38 and then 92.75.
Okay. Why are, so I know another thing too, take ownership is when we got into council, we did whatever we could to try to lower the rates to soften the blow. Didn't help us any, so to speak, because there's a risk reward, right? So we did lower that initial blow. Was it down 20% or something?
I think it was roughly 20.
Okay. And that also was draining our reserves, second whack, so. Risk reward, you know, and now we're looking at having to deal with that as well, which is part of the reason why these numbers are the way they.
A
Yeah,
good friend of mine just pointed something out. Sorry to
No,
interrupt
go
you
ahead,
on this
go
one.
ahead.
And they pointed out, and I think it's a very good comment. He said, you can't use, don't use the word reduce. We're not really gonna be able to reduce anything here. We gotta stabilize is the word we should be using. So I'm just trying to say in general language, when we're talking to people, we should never really use the word reduce
right,
for these rates, because we can't really reduce these rates. Now,
no,
we can try and stabilize them to
That's
some degree,
true.
but we can't reduce them. So just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry.
Mayor and council, just one thing I want to say is what we look at. Is I'm watching the cash balance and then does that cover 40% of next year's costs, our next year's debt service, and then capital improvements the next year. And so that's that graph, and I don't have that here just because there's so much. You want to make sure that your available cash balance stays above which we're predicting. And then that's what generates the increase in the rates. Is I'm trying to predict where that cash balance is.
I'm in favor of option 3. What exactly, I guess, and I read it a minute ago and my brain's a little foggy, I think we've been here too long, but what do you exactly need from me right now? As far as decisions or options, or I know it says discuss the chloride program, which is interesting, annoying, but it is what it is, right? The grants, I guess, so the grants, was it a grant or there's something to help people replace their softeners for on demand or whatever you're mentioning. How does that work?
So Mayor and Council, that's essentially what we're talking about here tonight
Okay.
for the chloride reduction program. So just to back up a little bit, okay? MPCA, we have a set limit from the plant. The only way you can decrease chlorides is at the beginning, not at the end. So it has to be at the water plant.
Yeah.
We are flirting with the limit. We have been for quite some time. One way that we can get an idea of, and Parrish is here tonight to answer questions as well. One thing we can do is if we do this chloride reduction program, our biggest culprit or we assume one of our biggest culprits, we don't know this for sure, is the water softeners in town. It's salt directly right into the wastewater. Okay. What we're going to try and find out, or what we'd like to find out is, and we're going to know, and Parrish can help me out with this too. We're going to probably get an idea right off the bat after the first year, whether or not we're going to reduce it or not. Paris, you can take it from here too. If you want. Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, Mayor Council, to kind of go on what Paul was saying, so the primary source of chlorides in at the wastewater treatment facility is primarily from water softeners, and not the newer softeners per se, but the older time-based softeners. And just their pure inefficiency when generation, it's actually the generation that causes the chloride levels in the wastewater. So that's what we're looking at right now, is implementing a plan, kind of what Kate was mentioning, to buy us some time. This has been tried and true in Minnesota and in neighboring states. They have had positive results with this. Again, this isn't the end all, but keep in mind, we are below the limits. We just don't want to exceed because, so to speak, we're in control of our destiny, if you will, versus if we start to exceed, that time frame starts to shrink in a quick hurry. So
Also, I'd like to add, Mayor and Council, there's no guarantee on this.
Just out of curiosity, how the other programs that you've looked at, how they ran it, where it's just an exchange, a straight up exchange for?
Yep. So one of the things that we would look at, the team would sit down and kind of devise a plan. We would look at probably the older parts of town to determine whether or not, if they have softeners, how many softeners we would do in the course of a year, trying to primarily target that time-based, that old inefficient softener. That does include commercial properties as well. Looking at how we would synchronize, would it be residential first to a commercial and residential, but just trying to maintain at least what we have right now as far as our chloride levels going forward.
I'm sorry, keep going on that. So is it like a rebate? I don't know, $300? I mean, have you thought, what are you thinking?
Correct. So Mayor and Council, what it would be a rebate toward the purchase of a new softening system. Rebate to be defined. Parrish, I believe, you've seen $500, I believe, in Marshall.
Yeah.
So 500, what do those things cost?
So good question. Parrish did a little research for us before tonight. So
Yeah, so
Paper's
what
gonna
we'd
kill
be
you.
kind of looking at is installed for a on-demand water softener is going to be around that $5,000 to $1,000 range installed. Obviously if a less capable person has to hire a plumber, that could influence that cost. Certainly the DIYer can do this, permit approved.
Well, you got a lot of faith in people.
Well, I'm just saying, there are
I
some
love
individuals that could
DIYers.
probably tackle
Keep me
this.
busy.
But
one
that's
thought,
kind of the ballpark.
yeah, and one thought, Mayor and Council, would be to have a appointed vendor to do this, so it could be well organized.
To help lower the cost as well, yeah.
Correct.
Plus that one vendor would allow you verification that it indeed went in this house, not their cabin up north or something.
Correct.
Right.
So the only thing I don't like about this is a lot of the unknowns I get. So we're gonna invest in something and hopefully we have faith in the people to be willing to spend even an extra $500 when the water rates are what they are. If we don't get, you have a selling point by saying we don't have to raise your rates as much if this works out. That's again an if.
I would say raise your rates, but we're talking about significant, we're talking potentially 20 million. You want to see rates skyrocket.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we get that sodium or chloride level.
Mayor and Council, with the newer softeners, they'll see a huge reduction in the amount of salt they're buying. It cuts it to a third. It's a huge reduction in the salt.
Right.
Correct.
So it is a direct financial gain for them to do this, but it is a direct out of pocket for them.
It's convincing
to do it.
people of this though
meantime.
too, and coming from the city who they don't trust because our rates are what they are, and it's just a negative image of government telling me what I have to do, right? If we're gonna make the investment, which I think it's a good idea to try it, I think it's beneficial if people can get on board, and that's the biggest question I have is the unknowns, because so many people, they don't want to pay for nothing. Regardless of what it is. And I understand certain things, right? Like I happen to know the people that work in this building, and it's nice that they have a decent building to work in. But most people don't care if they're in a moldy basement working, doing the job, because it's not them. They don't care, by nature, and people don't want to pay for anything. I mean, it's obviously we know there's a few frequent flyers that call and complain about everything about, where a police officer may be at this current time and whatever else. And
The plus side.
where's my money going, but I mean, there's a lot of people that don't complain, but there's also it's just trying to convince people that it's worth investing in. And that's the biggest fear I have about this investment, is convincing people to buy in, I guess. And is it going to be a good ROI in that aspect? Now, granted, it has to be with the cost, right? Of the 20 million, 16 million, whatever.
Plus side is it's not a complete gamble.
Right.
His.
I don't think it's a gamble. I think
His
it's,
research has shown that typically
Yeah.
you will bear fruit from this program.
it's an educated guess, but it's a very educated guess, I think. And I have faith that it would solve the problem, at least for the time being, until the MPCA decides to lower their numbers again and push us over the limit, because that's just what they like to do.
So Mayor and Council, you can also look at this. It's step by step as well. We talked about 3 years. We get a year of data, we're gonna start seeing something, right? And at that point, the decision can be made. I mean, there are changes that can be made at that point as well.
Right. I don't know, I guess do we have a, I don't know, maybe it was in here and I don't remember it, but do we have a total number of grant dollars that can be distributed? Or we don't know, or we're gonna apply for grants? I think it said something
So,
about.
Mayor and council, right now, we don't have any grant funds.
Okay.
And to apply for grants, as we've learned in the past, there's no guarantee.
Right.
The interesting thing is if nobody signs up, we still have the money at the end of the year.
Right.
So, right, it's either if they want to make themselves successful, they'll do the program, they'll reduce their salt, they've got a little upfront out of pocket. But if we've got an entire city that doesn't want to do it, at the end of the year, we still have all our money.
Okay.
I know a couple other cities have found grants. We will definitely look. A lot of them require match. A lot of them are very competitive. And in the current financial positions of both state and federal right now, we'll look and we'll definitely do our best. But I think we have to move forward as if we don't have a grant.
Right.
But I think that's where the education, and that's, if we're gonna do this in 26, I think we gotta start hitting newsletters and education and getting people lined up for January 1st where we can start to do this. Otherwise, you're right, it won't be successful if nobody knows about it either. So.
Well, people gotta look at their mail. I just wonder too, if
It's always a thing.
yeah, you'll never live that one down. I like the idea. So with this program, let's say, because we have really good water, I've heard, right? It's like 13 grains from the plant or something, softness, or is that?
Yes, correct.
Well, the love of my life seems to think we have very hard water and wants a softener.
Yep.
I'd love to get her an on-demand one, but then now I'm doubling it. I mean, if I do mine at home and then we put one in the other house. That's, I'm just saying.
Do you want to have?
I gotta live with her.
Do you want
No.
to have your other one?
Being somebody who
I'm
hates.
kidding, she's amazing.
Personal.
Being somebody who hates rules and laws, though, do we have to make it's a good question, because do we have to make an ordinance up front saying new installs have to meet a certain standard? I don't know, it's a question for you, because I've got.
You would have to.
I would think so too.
You would probably have to, and I'm with you as far as hating new rules, but I mean, in order to avoid calamity.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of laws, right? Unfortunately, is you have to do some of that stuff.
Mayor Council, and looking at a lot of this stuff, there have been other cities that have passed absolute no softeners allowed. There are some that have just went with the on-demand versus the old time base. So I think you know, looking down, once we start to sit down and formalize this plan a little bit more, in conjunction with an ordinance, probably won't be out of the question. Of some sort. I mean, we'll vet that, obviously, but I think one has to look at that option as well.
Well, I'm probably looking at having to replace my softener sometime soon. Not that it's all about me, because we got a lot of people we gotta deal with here, but
Right.
my timeline is like, it's what, my house was built in 2000, so it's right around that time anyway, where I'm gonna have to replace it anyway. So the timing's great for me. But somebody that just bought a softener too, you know, or whatever, had to replace it. And I mean, these companies too, they're outrageous. I hate to say it, I'm in the business and I work, HVAC works in conjunction with plumbers, and some of these costs that I see that even we, you know, the company I work for charge, in my opinion, I don't know how people can afford a lot of this stuff. And it's, I mean, you're in a business to make money. My check's nice, so I mean, I get why they have to charge what they have to charge too, right? It's all the overhead and everything, but
Your point, well, nobody's coming to take, if you put a new softener in, nobody's coming to take it out. This is only for new installations after a set date. That's
right. But I'm just thinking too, I mean, I'd be happy to upgrade mine before it's needed, right?
Right.
Personally, just because it's like, hey, that's one thing off the plate too. I don't have to worry about for a while in theory. I like the idea of the program. I don't know what it's gonna cost or what we figure out, but if it's just for 1 year, what's the cost of that? If we had to guess.
Mayor and Council, in our packet, I think we budgeted for $100,000 for 3 years. Each year for 3. Yes.
That's where the 300 came from, okay.
Yep.
And again, that's, you know, we get to the end of the year. It's still there. It would just roll to the next year because it's in an enterprise fund. So
Right. Well, it sure would be nice if we had a second whack from 120 units. Sorry, go ahead. That's all I got. I like it. The chloride, time buying.
Who wants to weigh in next?
Blah, blah.
Anybody? Amy?
I don't really have anything to add to after Joe's questions, just, I like the idea of the chloride reduction. I didn't think about it too. I would like to see rates not raised so much, but I'm not sure what we can do about it at this point. So that's really all I have that's all I have to add.
Sir?
Yeah, I'm kind of at the same thing. I mean, we don't ever want to have to increase our rates, but realistically, we have to we're always going to be having to increase them a little bit. I think that's just the reality of where we're at. And clearly, Parrish is telling us that right now we're within the whole chloride. But if we're getting close to dancing on that line, we really can't afford to sit back and say, well, we're just gonna kind of hold off and see. I think we don't have a choice at this point. We have to do that. Like Kate said, if it doesn't work out, we're not necessarily losing that money. It's still gonna be there. But I think this is again, trusting staff, knowing what the research that they've done. I think that they've done their due diligence and kind of guided us on. It's not ever fun raising our rates. We're never gonna like it, and they're always gonna hate it, and whatever. But we have to keep our plant functioning. We have to keep it, and we have a state of the art thing. We've gotten compliments on how well our plant is run and maintenance and all that. And I think we just need to keep going with that.
I think the new plant smells like shit.
Oh, that's the jokes are getting bad, Kevin.
Joe,
Close us all, Kevin.
you need to eat or something. You're getting angry.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, we still need to talk about,
We'll come back to that. Yeah, but-
we still need to talk about item 1 or 2.
Right.
I mean, it kind of dovetails back to the development of North Shore. That's gotta be discussed.
Right. We'll come back. To it.
What are other cities currently doing? Have you talked to your peers and seen whether they have similar problems and?
Yeah, so actually the one city that I did talk to was Marshall. I have spoken to them specifically about this program. So they actually have lime softening in place, but to lower it even further, they had to implement this program. So at that time, though, there was grant money available through the MPSA for this, and they were able to receive, I think it was upwards of $240,000. Now, in our discussions with the MPC the other day, Randy Thorson, who's the supervisor for the water regulatory portion of the MPCA, said that that grant has dried up. So, but going back to the Marshall conversation, they have implemented, they went, of course of the year, they have seen results. I would say the one city that had actually seen the biggest results was actually Madison, Wisconsin. Chloride levels vary depending upon what part of the state you are or whatever receiving body of water receives the wastewater effluent. So that's going to dictate the limit that you're imposed. Ours is 354. We're currently at about 300 milligrams per liter. So I would say, and like I said, every other city that I've looked at or researched, there seems to be a positive good thing from it as far as the results are concerned. So.
And I agree with Kate, public education, even at this stage or at whatever comes after tonight. You start it now, whether it's blurbs on our website or some, whatever the means, social media, whatever it takes. We got to educate the public because they're going to think skullduggery right off the bat, you know, when rates are going up and they'll be bitching and this and that. But education is key no matter what. How do you get full compliance? And if some people, they're not going to tell you, I don't have a softener, but I do. Or B, I have an old softener that's working, but I don't have a softener. How do you do that stuff? And what if 50% comply and go, yep, I'm all for it. Let's gun ho. So now your levels have dropped of chloride. You still got these knucklehead, you still have individuals that are not participating, that aren't participating and being honest with you, and they're still generating product.
Yeah, so that's going to be the next discussion that I'm gonna have with Scott down for the city of Marshall is how did you exactly implement it to vet the process? So you know that that softener that is going to be exchanged isn't a 3-year-old softener, but you just don't like it because of whatever reason. So they actually kind of came up with a plan as far as when, you know, you came forward, that citizen came forward with, hey, I want this new softener. I think they actually mentioned that staff went to and verified that softener was essentially antiquated, if you will, as far as the capabilities. But that's just, I mean, that's just one example. So like I said, or previous, I think once approved, we will certainly vet all viable options in making sure that, you know, this is successful, right? So I would hope that 7 years of newsletter blurbs with chloride reduction in it has had some effect. That could be maybe why we're staying around that 300. But then again, there's no data to support that either. So.
You remember how many years, it was 2 years plus on water meter saga, you know, how long it took to implement to final conclusion.
Do I ever?
How many homes are currently using city water right now? Including Oak Grove 220?
1840, Darcy?
1,840 units?
Give or take?
Are any of the apartments using a commercial unit in their basement and servicing all the cubes in their apartment? Yeah.
I wouldn't think they would have a softener.
Oh, you mean like a softener?
Right.
You have to have a damn industrial
Yeah.
softener.
So that would be an
or
industrial
something.
situation
Yep.
there. These guys, then they'd be allowed a stipend too towards their new unit if they wanna, well, they'll have to comply, but
Yeah.
those commercial ones are quite a bit more money for what.
Well, and to kind of go back to what Paul was mentioning earlier, so the city that we're talking about here, they did 500 for residents, then I think they increased it to $1,000 for commercial. Which makes sense because it's a substantially larger system.
Yeah.
You know, if you take the ones that are car washes here in town, they're 5 times the size of a
Yeah.
regular residential shop.
Have garage sales. Is that
Maybe it's
cool?
just the car wash's prop fault. No, I'm just kidding. We only have 3, but.
Well, there is that caveat, because the one thing that we're not gonna be able to control on any of this chloride stuff is the wintertime car washing. That is where the rock salt or the salt debris on the car is washed into the sanitary
Right.
as well. So all of the data that we'll compile over the course of this year will have that caveat, because sure enough, every year we see that spike in January, that high chloride. Really has nothing to do with the amount of softeners that we've had or have, or their inability to treat. It's primarily from that car wash
Your metering that's coming out of the sewer side of.
Well, so that's another thing that we're going to start doing. I've already reached out to our lab. We are going to be receiving 2 portable samplers and we're going to set them geographically through town, within the manhole system, hopefully in about 4 different quadrants. Primarily, one of the areas that we are going to specifically target is the Zion Parkway discharge into our system as well. So we'll be able to tell how much chloride specifically is coming from Zion Parkway.
Nice control area, isn't it?
What's that?
A nice control area.
Yeah, well, and that's what we need to do. I mean, if we're gonna acquire all this data and come back in another year and say, hey, this was successful, we want to have all the data we possibly can for you guys to make a determination to keep moving forward with this. So
Have you had any discussion with Oak Grove to this point?
we have not. This is very infant stages of this, but we wanted to kind of bring it to your guys' attention,
Sure.
see what you guys think of this.
On page 40, you say, if this is not successful, city will begin planning for new construction, water plant construction. You also had it noted in one of the other slides. What's the definition of construction, construction of a new water plant? If you didn't have this chloride issue, when would we have to start expanding or moving? I guess we don't know until you add more units, right? More users.
Yeah, so the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment facility is in good shape. Right now, we utilize about 14% of its total capacity. But the wastewater side of things, that's actually in good shape too, as far as our total equivalents and the capacities down there. So, the biggest driver of the wastewater plant right now, as far as anything is concerned, I would say would be potentially the chlorides. And like I mentioned before, right now, we're somewhat in the driver's seat, being able to control our destiny and how we want to keep that limit or keep our levels below the limit. So, but if we exceed, then we get into the MPCA's timeframe of expediting processes.
All right, and then one area here too, you said the campus wouldn't be big enough to support a new construction of a new or expansion of. Didn't I see that written here somewhere? You thought the campus wouldn't, the foot or?
No,
Oh.
so Mayor and Council, we don't know that yet. That question cannot be answered yet. We're working on the answer to that question.
Yeah, you just fill in.
All right.
Bill.
That's all I have. That's all I have, Mayor.
I'm fully on board, especially since I got the wonderful MPCA tour and I heard it firsthand from their mouths. I mean, I certainly don't mind spending my mayoral thing on the newsletter talking about this repeatedly. It just makes sense. Potential 300,000, which may not even be 300,000 that we have to spend, and we know from other communities that it's worked. When it comes to the sewer and water rates here, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Yeah, I get it. I don't like it either. But I look at my septic system and well system at home. This is still probably a buy compared to that. I can't put in a septic system for any less than $20,000 to $25,000, a well, $10,000. Heck, I'm in $35,000. They've probably got to replace it in 30 years. So these rates, sad as they are, it's just the cost of doing business, and I don't like it, but I'm willing to take the heat on it. So
Try it.
I might regret saying that, but
Yours is like forward, forward, forward.
I guess.
I'm just looking at, I go, that's how we met Joe.
But I mean, I look at the other cities here and I mean, yes, we are we are in one of the top 3 or whatever else, but we're not like way out of the ballpark. It's like, I keep hearing from people, we're paying 2, 3 times more than surrounding cities. This doesn't bear that out.
This should be public knowledge too. This should be able to, the public can see this, so
I would
the,
agree.
and maybe qualm some of that stuff. You'll never please everybody, but
Correct.
numbers don't lie.
We go down to Arizona too, and their rates are insane for electricity and water. I can't believe they can even afford that.
So I don't, go ahead, Darcy. I'm sorry.
We had the earlier conversation about the tip, and I just want to go back to, that's the difference between 1 and 2. Is 2 lowers those, expected rates. because we have 120 equivalent units or more coming onto our system and billing out and paying for some of those things out there. Another big thing is the whack and sack. That's gonna help fund that, the road and the water and the sewer that needs to go in there. So that's just all within your rights. We're not asking you to set these rates, you know, we gotta get through budgets. We'll keep looking at that, but we want you to know that this might be where it goes. If anything major changes. And the last time, I think everybody was surprised, hey, our rates increase, which was a lot higher than this. We wanna start educating people that this could be coming.
Just want to say one more thing. I want to thank all of you, Kate, Paul, Parrish, and Darcy, because I found this information very helpful. I truly did. So it's, like you say, there's some gray, but it's pretty black and white at the same time. And I appreciate that.
So if you look farther in there, I wanna say, that Public Works did a really good job of laying out all the different projects throughout the city. There's a sheet there that shows the road water, road stormwater, water sewer projects. And then there's other things that they started talking about. One of them is the media. That's, we didn't understand the cost of that media, of how to dispose of it. That's, $800,000. That's a lot that we got a price in there for it, but it was a lot less.
Bolton Bank didn't make that clear to you?
Huh? So.
But when I see this forecasted 30, 40 years forward, like you've got in here, that's reassuring to me. It truly is. You're doing your due diligence, and I appreciate it.
Well, that's the unfortunate truth too, because you will get residents pissed off, just like we were about these raises regardless. And knowing that if we don't listen to Darcy again, you're gonna be at a, 45, 85 or something crazy. I don't remember what the hell it was, but it was too much.
On the colored paper, all printed up pretty, make you feel better.
I did
No. None of the pretty paper helped.
But you explained it very well too, as far as the potential cost to have to add on to 15 or 16 to 20 again. And it's like you're basically buying the whole thing all over again. So what the hell are you gonna do with that?
Well, and these calculations understand there's, I think I have 3 years that we're selling bonds. Especially if we have to do anything major to the water plant, but the year that we do Highway 47, we're gonna have to sell bonds. The year that there's another year that we are gonna have to sell bonds to fund this stuff. We're just not gonna have the cash flow. So that then generates that we have to pay principal, we have to pay interest. I did just see something interesting that today that they may take our bonds and make them not tax exempt. That's gonna hurt us.
So that $17 billion surplus is gone now,
They have been tax exempt
Oh,
for,
really?
I think they said over
huh? Called
100
Trump.
years.
Son of a bitch.
And they are looking at, that's a way to generate some more money. And the article from the League of Minnesota Cities said, that's gonna put some small cities, they're not gonna be able to sell a bond.
And that's federal.
That was coming from the federal.
Sorry, it's not they should.
Anybody
Anybody reconsider their TIF?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I mean, maybe that plays right into this. Does anybody?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time sitting still.
No, I mean, we're pretty much there. I mean, you need any more direction pretty much? No? Darcy?
You'll see more of this as we walk through
Yeah,
the budget,
absolutely.
and stuff, but I did not want to surprise you at the end of the year and say, oh, okay, we gotta do it.
And I'm okay if somebody up here says that they want to change their opinion on the earlier, now's the time to speak right now, but I'm still where I'm at, so.
I'm where I'm at.
If the road was a 1.1 million, I would flip over. But, I mean,
It's understandable.
we can always change it in 2027, I mean, if the $3 million on said item 3, that's a maybe. I mean, we wouldn't ask for the state for some money. We might not get our number pulled for that.
Very true.
I mean, and that's just a maybe. The Hiller stuff, we don't know. Well, 20 new single house, family, 20 is not hard to hit. Where are we at now? 13, Darcy? Oh, we're 24, we have 15 permits for.
So, oh.
That's hit and miss too, though.
That's a tough year.
So Mayor and Council, I actually pulled the last 3. So in 2022, we had 31, in 23, we had 10, and in 24, we had 26. So we're averaging about 22 a year. So
You
that's,
know, that also comes back to the point, do we have anything for sale, any lots for sale for people to build on that thing?
There's one right behind Subway.
that's what I was thinking.
Sorry.
I mean, for these 20 houses to be built, they gotta be built somewhere and.
Mayor and Council, so we are highly dependent on the Bluffs to put their final plat in. Otherwise, we have a couple lots here and there. So it is becoming narrow.
The 20's a maybe as well, then I'd say. I
Yep.
mean, Realistically.
Bluffs is huge if that can finally get going.
But they're, Mayor and Council, so the Bluffs is even considering phasing it. They're not going to, that will be,
Everybody does, so.
right, it'll start in a much smaller phase, so. The 20 felt very realistic. Especially after reviewing the last 3 years.
Well, when we reduced them, we had a goal, what was that, 16 or something homes per, something like that?
I think we have goal of 10.
A little like 10.
That's higher.
Well, I'm gonna stick where I'm at. I'd rather forego a North Shore for now. It looks like a $3 per thousand from 58 to, or no, more like the $7. $7 a pop, at least for 1,000 gallons, and I think the citizens are better suited if we hold our breath a little longer. So I'm still where I'm at.
Put some card readers on the toilet at the park. I gotta
get
shut
some
up,
food
I'm
in this
sorry.
Me too.
Anybody else got anything at this point? Staff?
Nope,
Yes, no?
Nothing further.
Okay.
Sorry, I prolonged things.
I don't need a motion to adjourn meeting, work session adjourned at 8:33. Thank you, everyone.
That was a long.